I will call to order this meeting of the San Marcos City Council. It is a workshop. This is day 2 of our annual visioning session. It is Friday, January 26th, and it is 8:30. Ms. Bingham, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Prater. Here. Mr. Scott. Ms. Barstow. Ms. Easton.
Here.
Mr. Easton.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Mendoza.
Here.
Would you read item 1, please? Sorry, I have a list. All right, we have our citizen comment time period. San Marcos City Council welcomes speakers at work sessions, regular meetings, and workshops. There is a sign-up process. Speakers may speak once during the citizen comment time period, may not yield time to others. You have 3 minutes to speak. Will start when you state your name. And we will start with our first speaker who joins us online, and that is Lisa Marie Capoletta.
Hey, good evening, y'all. My name is Professor Lisa Marie Capoletta. They call me LMC. The mold is just atrocious the last 2 mornings. My friend was on Grande, and I appreciate Lauren clarifying that. Maybe that's why she couldn't see the video yesterday. I want to make a couple of corrections because I was knocked out on mold yesterday. Number one, as far as the individuals who are in charge of the cybersecurity, it's Mike Stern. I don't know why I said Mr. Carr. I apologize, Mr. Stern, and also Michael, who's our cybersecurity expert, and I've had a chance to meet with both of them, and they're just brilliant, and I have a lot of trust, and you guys know me. I'm a hard when it comes to city staff and their jobs. The other correction, I was so caught up in my Russell Brand imitation yesterday. Did y'all catch that? Do you watch him? He's just brilliant. I love him. Tim Pool, and of course, I'm a big Tucker fan. You may have your feelings about Tucker, but you know what? He always comes armed with his research, and that's why I respect his work. Chase Stapp has worked very hard on this emergency communication situation, and I just think you got him running around just like you do, Liz. And if we're going to have a DEI lady, and I'm going to talk about that later because I have some concerns about some waste with that department, then you need to give them backup. As far as development controls, what Joe was talking about yesterday, let's think about this. We had Capstone. You like my American flag? Isn't this cute on my little microphone? I thought that was cute. Go America. Go Texas. As far as older development controls, you guys had these controls with Capstone Cottages and Blanco Gardens, and city staff ignored us, just like they did the high rise with the big crack going down the middle, and I waited 2 months to see if they would catch it, and as soon as I dropped a dime, we had some painter contractors out there. You have the citizens paying for these CIP projects, which are caused by the developments. Now, the 4 horsemen of the anti-apocalypse are police, cybersecurity, fire, and if we don't do EMS, then I'm just going to throw in the city secretary's office because they do things when it comes to transparency. You've got a lot of waste up there, and I'm not seeing anything in these presentations about how to cut waste, like these bike lanes up there that nobody wanted, and one of your developer homies dropped a dime and you gave it to him, and now they're just sitting there, and nobody wants them in town. It's these sorts of favoritism, privileged things that you do that you're expecting us to tighten our belts, but I'm not seeing anything from you about cutting costs. Those bike lanes on Hunter are an utter waste of money, and they're just another example of virtue signaling. If you want to be nice to staff, Mayor, then you need to be nice to the citizens, because we have tightened our belts to the point where there's no more notches to make the loop. So I'm kind of expecting you guys to double down on saving the citizens' time and to make sure that you're funding the essential services to keep us safe. Thank you for your time, and God bless San Marcos.
Our next speaker is Maxfield Baker, who joins us remotely.
Hi, am I on?
Yes, you are.
Oh, I'll get my video there too. Great. So today I am here on behalf of the Civics Club. The San Marcos Civics Club had our first meeting on the 19th at Tantra Coffee House, and we talked through a lot of issues, namely what our charge is going to be. We had over 34 people in attendance, and we have over 127 people on our Facebook group. We encourage everybody to come and join us. Our next meeting is going to be February 19th, again, still at Tantra Coffee House at 6:30 p.m. And what we plan to move forward on is basically creating trails of accountability and creating ways for people to know how to get in contact with those that they feel need to be held accountable. So as an example, throughout y'all's visioning session, you're going to be identifying budgetary expectations, wishes, dreams, philosophical ideas. And we want to know the boards and committees and positions that you serve on as representatives, as volunteers, so that when community members have issues with whatever is in your purview, they know exactly who to reach out to. So as an example, transportation came up at our meeting as a very important issue for us to focus on. And we said, okay, well, we will find out, what boards are, or what members serve on our CART boards. When do those meet? Where are those agendas? The Parking Service Advisory Board, when are those? Who serves on those? We're really not going to be actively up in your face about these issues. We want to encourage community members to kind of carry that torch forward themselves. So we will be reaching out to city staff and have already begun to do so to retrieve some of those documents. And our goal is to take this kind of, all these different Excel spreadsheets, all these different PDFs and stuff, and turn them into digestible and accessible documents that hopefully we can even turn around, and provide to the city to share with our neighbors and community members as well. We really are trying to be a big tent type of organization. While many of us, including myself, have our own issues that we'll continue to tackle on our own, we really don't want those political differences to divide us as a club. We want to make sure that, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, a Libertarian, a Socialist, that you have a place to come to find out who is in the seats of power, who are these gatekeepers, and what access and powers do you have as a community member to engage those folks and feel like you have some sense of control over the way the city is growing. By and large, one of our main takeaways was encouraging people to apply to our boards and committees. And we had a few people sign up that very night. So we had a great cross-section of ages as well as activist history. And we hope to see you all at the next meeting on the 19th.
Our next speaker is Diana Baker, who joins us remotely.
Okay, can you see me? Can you see me?
No, but we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, okay. Now I'm starting the video. Okay. I just want to thank all of you all. Can you see me now? Okay. I want to thank all of you all for the amount of time that you have spent on this. I really appreciate, everyone who has worked on this so diligently. With that said, I can tell you that I am live in the historic district, but I am a very big fan of Jane Jacobs. Allison Brake can tell you that. I've read her, and I do not like urban sprawl any more than anyone else does. But, the historic districts and the old neighborhoods are not responsible for urban sprawl. And that is just a logical error that I see coming up over and over again. Another thing is that, the people on Belvin Street are rich. I can tell you, I can guarantee that there's maybe 4 or 5 very wealthy people that live on Belvin Street, and the rest of us are all just, house poor, old house suckers who just spend our whole life and all of our money just trying to maintain these old handmade works of art. And so we could not afford an ADU, my husband and I, and most of the people who live in the historic district probably couldn't get a loan to do an ADU. So please consider that when you're going forward with this. And the more, the only people that will be able to afford to do this ADU stuff is probably developers. And you don't want the historic district to stop being a neighborhood and become a big developer area, because it's right next to the university, and that's part of the problem. To me, it is not about the rich versus the poor here. I think that what we're looking for is, HOA protected neighborhoods versus neighborhoods that are not protected. And that is the real issue there. And to try to turn it into a class war is really very unfair, because I know a lot of very poor people that live on Belvin Street. And finally, when you do this survey, please treat it like a regular election. Don't allow people to come in from out of town and tell us how to develop our policy. Keep the data clean. Don't manipulate it. Publish the raw data, and don't allow. And at this point, we really have to worry about artificial intelligence filling out the forms. So please keep an eye on all that, and don't be vulnerable to any kind of possible, contamination of the results. So I thank you all for everything that you do. Please publish the raw data, and don't, turn this into a class war. It's really very unfair for those of us who spend all of our money and all of our time trying to preserve an old piece of art. We're not all rich on Belvin Street. Believe me, I can show you my bank account. Thank you very much. And thanks for spending all this time doing this.
Mr. Bingo, is that everyone just signed up? All right, in that case, yeah, we will go to item 1.
Full discussion and participate in fiscal year 2024-2025 visioning workshop. Topics discussed may or may not include or be limited to growth, quality of life, economic development policies, transportation, community partners, outreach, future infrastructure, and development needs, facility needs, beautification and community enhancement of core services, including future staffing and personnel needs, flood mitigation strategies, and provide direction to staff.
Good morning, everyone. All right, we're going to set the stage for day 2. We're going to be talking about the priority list that we worked on yesterday evening. We are going to finish up with the second page with the CIP project. And then we're going to review and finalize the strategic plan goals and outcomes and have next steps. Let me change that.
While she's doing that, I just want to give a point of clarification. I understand there was an item yesterday that maybe was not intended to be taken in the way that it was on the Mitchell Center. There was some discussion about that. And I understand that that's gotten some people really concerned and worried about the direction of that. The reason staff brought that forward was just because there are some financial implications if the council was looking at the city holding on to the property. It is not the intent to devalue the historic significance. That is something we will hold very close and check into what all of that is there and make sure that our intent is to bring this back to the city council to talk with city council about what some options are if they would like to dispose of the property, hold on to the property, and what that can even look like. But again, the intent was never to not honor the past significant history of that building. So just wanted to make sure that was very, very clear because that was not intended as any disrespect to the history and significance that building has. We just need more work to do to look into it, to make sure that we can guide council in the most appropriate way and get the direction from council on how we take the next steps forward after the August 2025 lease expires. So just wanted to say that first and foremost, Mayor, and our sincerest apologies to anybody that may have been upset or alarmed by that conversation yesterday. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so what we'll do this morning is go through those CIP projects. I think they'll have some hefty conversation, dialogue around that. And then once we are done with that, depending on what time is at, we'll take a break possibly. And then we'll go into all the ones have been put into place. Thank you so much, Hayden, Carrie, for staying late yesterday and making that happen, so we can see all the ones and try and prioritize those so we can have some good walking forward effort for our community. All right, let's go ahead and begin. Okay, on the CIP projects, the first is bond election. Fund CIP identified bond projects including fire stations, park improvements, transportation, and flood protection, targeting a 2028 bond election, 17 to 20 million for planning in fiscal year 2025 through 2028.
So I'll just add a few comments about these projects as they come up. And I think on the bond election side, it was with the direction that we are considering the bond election in 2028. What that tells me on the CIP side is that we got to get these projects that are going to potentially be bond projects, get those cost estimates updated and accurate. So that means in 25 and 26, we've got to make sure we have funding for the design of those projects. Between now and next year, where I'm looking for input for the council is, look at the CIP as we go through the CIP process. All the projects we have identified as bond candidates, valid bond candidates. Do we need to consider other projects? Do we say, that project probably should not be bond election? That's the input I'm looking at. I don't need that today, but I will need it over the next 6 months as we go through the CIP review process. As we go through this list today, though, I will indicate which ones have been identified as bond election, and if you have some sense of whether or not that should be bond election, let me know. If not, let me know. And because we made that decision to pursue the bond election, it does make this list review get a lot easier, because that was going to be a challenge if they weren't going to be bond election. We're going to have to shift them up and down on the list, but since that determination is made, it does make this conversation a little bit easier to get through today. So the first project is the Airport Improvements Project. That project is not shown in the CIP. It is not identified as a bond election, or would not be when it gets put in the CIP. We're waiting on the master plan, the airport master plan updates come through, so we can really get a good idea of what needs to be included. The direction we're looking for in that particular project for council is, are we serious about putting those investments at the airport? Because that'll tell me how much priority to put those when tough decisions come about moving projects up and down. So is there a desire for this council to focus in on those efforts with this CIP funding at the airport to get to that ability to bring in those larger commercial aircrafts?
Short answer is yes. And I put this on one of those that really could transform everything that goes on at the airport, create some additional revenue for the community, create opportunities for workforce development or whatever else might go on out there. I put this pretty high on my list. I know this is going to be expensive. And when do we expect the master plan on the airport to be updated? Is it a year or two, or has it even been booked to be done?
It's my understanding we're going through the RFQ process right now to get the update approved so that we can get reimbursed through TxDOT. So based off what I know about master plans, you're looking at probably 12 to 18 months would be a good estimate.
Okay. All right, well, yeah.
Jim is going to correct me.
Sorry, I'm shaking his head over there.
We're tied down here, so we're doing some walking today.
Thanks, Sean. In the FAA world, we had to call this an airport master plan for funding purposes. In reality, it's more of an update to the master plan we did 3 years ago. So I think I don't think it's going to take that long. We have a base document that council approved 2 or 3 years ago. We're going to update that that's focused more on just what does the airport need to accommodate larger aircraft. So as soon as it becomes, as soon as we get through the RFP process, as Sean said, I think we can have it wrapped up in less than 6 months.
Okay.
And our consultant, if they're the successful respondent, the planning firm, they've indicated that they could divert more resources to compress the time frame than they normally would.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Sing out together.
Hey, Some of the things we do have as an airport is the ability to get federal funding. How much federal funding will be able to help in this transition as well? It's something on the taxpayers' back.
Our plan is for at least to have 90% funding, FAA funding for the majority of the projects that we've been working on in the CIP. It's a little unusual this year because in the Texas legislature, they allocated, appropriated, I don't know the exact amount, but probably 2 or 3 times more in state funds that are eligible now for airports like San Marcos. So there's another bucket of funds that we're working hard with the legislature to get appropriated for the airport. It's essentially an earmark, but we got a whole lot of work to do before that comes to pass. And there's no match on those funds. So I don't want to get the excitement too high on that, but it is a new bucket of money that the state has not provided before. And we've already started working legislatively and with friends in the legislature to raise the awareness on the state level for the airport. But I think we can count on a 90-10 on the FAA funds, and additional money from the state. We'll just have to see.
I just wanted the public to understand that the airport isn't really pulling that much funding from the city at all, and actually within itself, between the profit it makes and the federal funding has that ability to obtain, it's almost self-sufficient. So I just wanted to kind of pass that on.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that too, and I'll go sit down again. We want to help both the community and everyone in this room understand just what an asset the airport is for the people of San Marcos. Its location, the infrastructure that exists, the demand for services, and we're really proud to be a part of the development of the airport, and it just has a lot of potential, more than we've ever expected with the demand that we're seeing now. So that's my Chamber of Commerce one.
So I'm a yes, understanding that the airport is a big strategic asset for our community and has potential for growth and really grow our economy and our tax base. I do have some major question mark, exclamation, the $110 million. I just answered one of the questions about you're hoping to get about 90% of that reimbursed from the feds, hopefully other earmarks from the state. This may be a John question, but would that debt, those bonds, would that still kind of be on our balance sheet, even though if it's getting reimbursed through feds? It's a real specific question, and we're talking very high level right now.
Typically as John walks over, I'll see if I can answer that. Typically on a grant application, you would not be responsible for the 90% that's federal match. They'll typically have an agreement in place prior to expending those funds. And so if the grant was a 90-10 split, they need a commitment from the city on that 10% match. And then as far as the other 90%, it just depends on how the grant is executed. Sometimes it's a reimbursable type grant where we reimburse from them. Sometimes it goes to them and we just give them the money. So I think that's, you want to correct anything? Does that sound right? Okay. And so I don't know, Jim, I feel like the majority of the grants I've seen, it's us giving Tex out the money so they take the debt on, if I'm not mistaken.
Remember, with some of the road improvements some time back, they used the TxDOT pass-through financing. But from my understanding, the debt is still kind of on our balance sheet. So when we're going to borrow future money, we have, even though we're getting a source covering that, it's still kind of showed on the balance sheet. This is a.
Yeah, so that is correct. It's just the way that the grant is handled. In that instance, the city did issue that debt, and the state reimburses us for a piece of that. In this instance, though, the city would only be responsible for that 10% match, and the 90% would be handled by FAA. And like Mr. Condor pointed out, most of the time, TxDOT would handle this type of construction project to where we would just pay TxDOT for our 10%, and TxDOT would manage the project itself.
And for our citizens that we were watching yesterday, it was mentioned that there was an immense pent-up demand for airport hangars, 200 plus entities waiting on hangars. So if we're looking at a $10 to $15 million commitment of city funds to help enhance the airport, I just want our citizens to know that there's a demand for that. These investments could bring in additional tax base, broaden our tax base, really energize a sector of our economy and a strategic asset in our community with that airport out there.
And yes, that's it. Correct. With those hangars, you get the hangar rentals, which would help fund the, or repay any kind of debt the city may take out for those hangars.
I'm going to go ahead and give a yes to this one as well. The 90-10 makes a significant difference in my judgment of this as well. I think this is good for our jobs. I think this is fantastic, just not only for the city of San Marcos, but for Gary right next door, for those individuals that maybe want to get involved with our airline or our airport here. This property has been such an important piece of San Marcos for well over 80 years when it was the Air Force Base, then splitting apart into Gary and into the airport. I think it's awesome that we are now starting to recognize how amazing the potential is for this airport to bring us just diversifying our jobs and the economy. And thank you guys for doing all the work on this.
Thank you. My concern is what kind of traffic are we bringing into San Marcos? And how much revenue do we expect in this fiscal year to bring in? And what type of where's the revenue coming from? What kind of businesses?
Well, that's a tough one, but I would say the revenue would be all airport industry type businesses. You could have most of the commercial airlines, is what I assume. Commercial air, I wouldn't expect a whole lot of passenger type. Just going off, I might need a little support from Jim on this one. What were you going to jump in there? There you go, Jim.
If you would also address freight.
Yes, I can't. I think there's the answer is one and the same for both. The emphasis on updating the master plan is how can the airport accommodate larger aircraft? And larger aircraft triggers, and there's working cargo, even commercial passenger service. But the larger aircraft is what our priority is, because that's where we need to beef up the pavement, the runways and taxiways to handle that extra weight in the aircraft. Larger aircraft buy more fuel. And our two primary sources of revenue at the airport is real estate related, hangar rentals, ground leases, and the other is fuel floatage fees, selling fuel. So we get a double benefit by increasing the ability of the airport to handle larger airplanes, both on the fuel sales as well as related investment for facilities for the larger aircraft, which is more hangars and more ground leases.
And I would add to that to the extent that we are able to bring additional tenants and commercial and industrial development actually on the grounds of the airport, that also can generate adjacencies as far as the surrounding area having either commercial, retail, and industrial development in and around the airport that would increase assessed valuations and, of course, then property taxes and sales taxes to the general fund.
I lost my train of thought and what? What'd you say?
I'm all for airport development, but we've been talking about this for 35 years. And granted, there have been numerous improvements at the airport, and a lot of things have been, put into place. But the big barrier, showstopper, was when we were told we needed a fire station dedicated to the airport. And then later, what I heard is we didn't have to have a full-fledged fire station. We just needed the right equipment, the right people trained. They were on site, the planes took off and landed. So that made a whole big difference to me, but at that point, it didn't matter anymore for where we were headed. So we need the information. I would love to see the airport developed into something that brings money in, but also provides service to our community. you know, you can get a plane into Austin or San Antonio, and then what do you do? And so I would look forward to that, partly because the other pay 90% of the cost. I don't think that there's any way we could afford the full cost. But I think coming up with some 10%, seeing a return, and it would be good to see what that potential return is.
And Mayor, the master plan update will give all of us a lot more information, including costs and facilities for, you know, for the fire department and the other needs we have to handle.
Microphone closer, it's not picking up.
Yes. Okay, is that better? Okay. The update we're doing to the master plan will address a multitude of topics related to larger aircraft, including the question of what support do we need from Les and from San Marcos Fire Department to be available to handle the larger aircraft. And we'll have more specific costs about the scope of that. The good news is it's in the city's master plan for the development of the Fire Training Academy already. So we'll get those answers to those, and they'll be good answers. We're not going to promote something that doesn't make good business sense. You know, when we're going through the enterprise funds, the airport is really different from those as well. We are an enterprise fund, but the whole structure of, you know, rate making and reserve funds, you know, those just don't completely apply to the business of the airport, which is more of a pure P&L proposition. And if it doesn't make good business sense for all of us, we're not going to recommend it.
And Mayor, I'll just add that, you know, Jim mentioned the master plan update a couple years ago, and since that point in time, because of the direction and some of the discussions with council, what we have done is initiated all of these studies so that we have the complete information that we'll be bringing you. So there will be more discussions on this in the future.
We're talking about revenue from the fuel. I'd like to know how much revenue we are making for our tax dollars. And this airport, is the airport going to be operating 24 hours, or is it just going to be for a certain time? And is this going to require more tanks to hold that extra fuel for the extra planes that come in?
Good questions. The first one, it looks like this year we're going to sell our fixed base operator is going to sell about 1 million gallons, or close to 1 million gallons of fuel. And the city gets so many cents per gallon for every gallon that's sold. I think this year it's going to be around 80,000, I believe, is the revenue to the city on fuel sales. Will the airport require larger tanks? Yes. And those will be eligible for federal funding as well. And what was the other question?
24 hours.
The airport is currently open 24 hours a day. The air traffic control tower is open, available to separate aircraft from 7 in the morning until 9 at night. But anyone can use the airport 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Well, in my opinion, I don't think we're quite there yet for me to ask for a bond for this. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead.
You know, when a couple years ago I brought up during a visioning session that I'm a firm believer that Central Texas is going to need a third airport at some point in time. San Antonio International and Austin Bergstrom are not going to be able to handle the capacity that I think that this region is going to see in the next 20 to 30 years. And the reason the federal government is willing to throw potentially these kind of figures at this is a national asset. And when we want to talk about what this might bring to the community, I don't think any of us can guess. I mean, what do we want it to look like? And I think the revenue generation could be endless if we have the vision, if the federal government steps up. And I know $10 million sounds like a lot of money, but to transform your airport to something that everyone is going to look at. I don't think there's very many assets like this around the country that are going to see the kind of attention that thing is going to bring. And so, you know, when we look at visioning, this is one of those projects where I'm like, this is a vision to transform San Marcos, Central Texas for the positive and to bring opportunities to our community. And that's why I'm wholeheartedly supporting this. And that's the reason the federal government is potentially going to throw so much money at this. So I know 10 million might sound like a lot of money, but for the next 20 to 50 years, what that could do to our community, I think the sky's the limit, and, you know, so to say. So I'm going to be wholeheartedly supporting this, and I just hope my colleagues have an open mind about this. That 10 million is a lot, but what could this truly mean for our community 20 to 50 years from now?
I think all have weighed in who wanted to weigh in, so do we need to talk more about this with other items?
Yeah, we got a little bit to go here.
Okay.
So we're trying to move it along a little bit quicker. I'll probably group a few of these moving ahead just to help speed it up. And really, the next two, the railroad overpass, the Center Point Bridge over the railroad there, and the Western Loop, which is basically the connection of Center Point between Lacima and Kissing Tree. The challenge we got there is neither one is in our CIP. Neither one is, which means neither one's identified as a bond election. On the Center Point Bridge, we've had conversations with the county about doing a partnership, and they will be pursuing a grant for a planning grant to design a bridge over Center Point. We've had several conversations, but the other problem with that is the loop between the Kissing Tree and Lacima. You know, we're counting on the county to step up and address that. If they don't, or if development doesn't come along and do it, is there an interest in the council to use city funds to build that? And so that's kind of the conversation we want to go now, is we want to focus on the Center Point Bridge, focus on the loop, or both of them just, we're in such shape that we probably need to push those off and deal with those further down the road.
Mayor and council, when we went to our recent lobbying trip, that was one of the things that we talked about, was the ability to use grant funding to be able to help with this. So that's part of the partnership with the county, is asking them to put in for that particular grant. And then we would need to look at then construction, you know, if the grant is awarded. So that's the part that we would need. But just looking at this area of town, you know, and emergency services, the outlet mall, those kinds of things. We did talk about McCarty and Center Point with the county, and this is the one that has priority that they were willing to put in the grant application for. So this is the one that we're prioritizing along with them. It doesn't still mean that we need to look at McCarty and some other things. And one of the biggest parts of this is just that we need to be able to tell a story, and what happens with us having one major thoroughfare that comes through San Marcos being Hopkins, and then having I-35. And so when any of those things get shut down, we've seen what happens in our community. So to be able to have some more mobility and more connections, to be able to get around whenever there is that type of situation, that's what we're looking at with getting this Center Point Bridge on the books as something that we want to plan for.
The Center Point Bridge, you mean the overpass?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm going to call it the bridge, I'm going to call it the connection, which is between Lacima and Kissing Tree. And I think we need both. I think that we should not bear that cost alone. If there is a grant, then it doesn't matter to me whether it's us or the county, or if we do something, you know, where everybody puts in a little. I think we're going to need, I don't know which kind of grant it is, which is the funding source might be, but I think that's something that we need definitely. We need the bridge, the overpass, and we need the connection in between. So we need, I think we need to keep it on the list and keep looking for a source of funds.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mayor, on this one. I think there could be potentially grant funding available for both. I'm glad, and we did talk about it in DC and had some good conversations about it. And I think there will potentially be some grant opportunities, especially for Center Point. I have one question about the connection with Kissing Tree to Lacima. Could Kissing Tree TERS money be potentially used to help fund part of that? Or am I out of bounds on that one?
John, would you be able to, would the Kissing Tree TERS be able to fund the connection between Lacima and Kissing Tree?
even part of it that kind of connects back there. And I may be out of bounds on that, I'm just throwing things out there.
No, it's a great question, and I'm trying to think if the boundaries would need to be extended to include that section. I'm not sure that the current boundaries of the Kissing Tree Tours includes that, so that might be one thing that we would need to do. And in terms of funding it, if it is within the boundaries, we would just need to amend the project and financing plan to show that that's one of the allowable projects, and we could look into it. We would probably also need to work with the current developer right now with that as well. So I think it is possible. It would just take some research to see how we would be able to go about it.
It just popped in my mind, we're sitting here trying to be creative about finding outside funding sources that may potentially have money sitting there to use. So, yeah, I'm with the mayor here on this one, that these two, I think we might be able to get creative or find grants. I don't think, I would prefer to see other projects put on a bond than these two.
No bond for this one. You said no bond election for these two?
Yeah, I think we'll be able to get these two done one way or the other through TxDOT or through federal railroad grants or something. I think it's one that we can keep pushing on. We were at DC, I think that creates some opportunities.
And I think, you know, one of the things we can look at too is, and because we'll have to be creative about how we finance construction if we are awarded a grant on the railroad overpass. So that's another thing that we can really look at in terms of really showing the benefit to the TERS and that boundary. So we'll definitely investigate that.
For the public watching right now, I know the reason behind it, but would you please explain why we have those two on there, the reason why we want to put an overpass and the reason why we want to have a connecting road?
Sure, One Rural Drive is the reason. It's nearing capacity. It's not gonna handle all that traffic coming in from out of town. And the next route to get folks to 35 is gonna be that Center Point extension all the way to exit 35. If you've ever been on One Rural Drive and sit in that line, you'll know what I'm talking about. And so I did want to clarify another question. Do you guys want me to go ahead and put this on the CIP? Because right now, neither one of them are on the CIP.
Mr. Condor, could you, definitely the connecting road, why do we need an overpass at the Center Point area again?
Because if you don't have the Center Point, the railroad tends to like to block that crossing with their trains, and so you have a huge backup. If you have all that volume coming down, imagine One Road 20 years ago when there wasn't a bridge there, right? They would get backed up, but when the connection comes through, you gotta get the folks over the railroad.
Thank you, sir. So as far as this project is concerned, I definitely want to get creative. I don't feel comfortable putting this on a bond, but as far as priorities are concerned, I'd like for us to concentrate a little bit more on the overpass bridge, just because we all know how the train situation is, and it's not just, people are concerned that that's just for Kissing Tree, that's also for people that live on Hunter Road, that's people who live out in that area. So I just want to make sure I say that out loud.
Yeah, I don't want to see it on the bond as well. Definitely want to go with a partnership with either county or wherever else you can find out there. I think the problem really is that train. If we can find a way to get them to move it on a little bit faster, and I think we have tried, but there has to be a way to do that for safety reasons. But that's my thought on it. Thank you.
Okay, council, what I'm keeping track of is bond, yes or no, and CIP, yes or no. So I'm gonna ask y'all to start over here, bond or CIP, is that what we want? Okay, and then I'm gonna go back with y'all over here.
So I'm a strong yes, just on the bridge and the connecting road. This is a growing, yes on both. Whatever we can do to make this connecting road and this bridge happen as soon as possible. You know, every day there's a new home being built in these two subdivisions. It's a rapidly growing area. Your comment about, Wonder World, the bridge is it's already reaching capacity, and you can visually see that when you're on Wonder World, and then whenever the train stops, it makes it even more. problemsome. So I'm a full yes on these projects and yes on whatever funding sources that needs to be done to make these projects come to fruition as soon as possible.
I'm yes as well. We're dealing with a community that's an aging community that may have more medical requirements than other areas. So I think it's important to have access, quick access.
I'm not making a decision. Again, I think this, like, budget sheet in the process is a little haphazard put together. The way it's structured doesn't allow me to make choices informed by impact and finance in the context of the whole. So it just seems irresponsible of me to take a hot take right now. But I appreciate the conversation. I think it'll help me be able to make a better informed decision later.
Okay, I'm taking this as, do we want to continue looking at it? And at some point, there may be some facts come up that I may say yes or no, I may change my mind. But this is just, do we want to continue the thought process and research, correct?
Correct. This is long-term. This will not happen in a year. This is going to be 5-10 years out before we can probably get to any of these. And construction-wise, probably 10 to 20 years. So these are very long-term.
At this point, for the bond that we're talking about, I'm a no, but I'm a yes for the CIP, because if we don't put on the CIP, nothing's going to happen. And regardless of how it gets funded, I think we all need to remember that on the CIP, there's that funding column, and sometimes there's outside funding that will come in. So just because it goes on the CIP doesn't mean it's necessarily a general fund, expense. But there's usually some sharing, some matching. So at some point later, I'd like to make it clear that my decision is not because of one particular community. We're growing out that way, and we've got people who need to get from point A to point B. I think we've all seen what happens when 35 gets blocked, which is a regular occurrence. And people start coming down the other roads, to use Hunter Road to get through town, and to get around the blockage. And if there's a train, as there often is at Centerpoint, that traffic's not going anywhere in the block. So I think it's for our whole community. We're growing south. We've got trades. We've got other developments coming. And so I'm a no to bond for now. I'm a yes to CIP, and that's for the whole community, not one.
Well, as for myself, I think I already said I'm a no for a bond. But I'm glad you mentioned that we're looking at 15 to 20 years for a CIP. If that's the case, I'm for the CIP.
Yeah, and I want to see it kept in the CIP as well. There's a lot of times I pull the CIP book out and just looked at 5 to 10 years. What are we kind of visioning? What are those big projects? And exactly what the mayor said, that a lot of times there's no funding available. It says right on the column, right? And so it also goes to show that we're looking at. I moved here 25 years ago, and I worked at Colorado Materials. I spent countless hours parked on Posey and Centerpoint waiting on those trains. It's been a problem for decades, and the crossings are a problem. And the fact that Hunter Road and 35 are busier, and there's so much growth out there on top of it. Yeah, keep it in the CIP book, and no bond for either one.
As of right now, I'm going to go ahead and ask to stay in the CIP as well. But again, just to reiterate how important this is, just not only for the individuals that are trying to get across the road, but we're looking at public safety, emergency vehicles, and things like that to be able to make the most timely decisions and get to where you got to go in time.
Anything else from us, Mr. Condo?
Nope, no, we're good there. The next two, probably don't need much input on that. The Sunset Acres Walls Edition, what I want to do is make sure that those are still the top priorities of the council. This is based off feedback over the last couple of years. We've already got funding approved for construction on those, and that's why we wanted to make sure we want to keep the foot on the gas on those two, particularly when it comes to 2027 funding. The combined amount for just those two projects is $18.6 million in general and storm. Doesn't include the utilities. General and storm is 18.6. I was estimating maybe about 22 million for storm and general in 27. And so I don't need an answer today. I just want you to be aware, based off how all this flushes out in the next couple of years, we might have to make a tough decision in a year or two about it if we want to push one of those, delay one of those if the funding's not there. So, you know, I don't need an answer today, so make sure the answer I need today is, are those still the top priorities of those two on the CIP?
I'll start, yeah. I realize there may be something else come up, but especially the Sunset Acres improvements were desperately needed. I'm not as versed on the Wallace addition, but as you pointed out at the Sunset Acres meeting the other night, there wasn't a whole lot that was required when people put in neighborhoods back in the 50s and 60s. And so we're having to go in and correct some of those things that are now into the new neighborhoods. And these are established neighborhoods, and I think we need to do what we need to do to make sure that those homeowners are not paying to have to replace, well, that they don't have flooding in their homes.
I'm an absolute yes and yes. I mean, the primary job that all of us do is to help protect these neighborhoods. And these are two projects that have been talked about for a long time. The Wallace addition has been in some need for quite some time of some additional street construction and utility burials. And I know it's going to be, I've been going through that in my neighborhood, and I know Victor Gardens just got done doing it, and it's not going to be easy and it's challenging. And but I absolutely want to see these two projects done as soon as possible.
So these two projects, I'm just a broken record for all the staff, and I do apologize because I know I annoy everybody about this, but near and dear to my heart, my neighbors, my family, these two neighborhoods, I want to say it again, there are lifetimes that have been spent in that neighborhood spending taxes. And there are generations that are there now just waiting patiently. And I am so grateful for how those citizens have dealt with this with such pride and patience. And I'm going to keep pushing this over and over again, those two projects. And I thank you guys for having the patience with me on being a big pain in the butt there.
The reason that we're bringing this up, obviously, we're not asking y'all for a decision today, but we're going to have to keep this front of mind with all the things that are being said. Take off the general fund, take off the general fund, take off the general fund, because that's going to handicap our ability to do some of these essentially. And so we're going to need to talk about, there may need to be some decisions down the line about one or the other, if that's the capacity, as far as which goes first, which goes next. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't do them. It just means that we may have to delay one. We may not be able to do them as close together as we would like. So, and I know that y'all would like. So that's something that we just need to talk about, and we wanted to tee that up so that we keep that front of mind as we're going to need to really discuss how we approach this.
Yeah, so I'm a yes on this, and these are your traditional CIP projects, you know, that there's a reason why there's a process, and you know, for these long-term projects, and you know, they have big dollar amounts associated with them, but in the end, you know, when neighborhoods are built, you know, after decades and decades, you need to go in and replace water lines, put in storm drains, things like that. I'm supportive of, I mean, there's nothing on this list that I'm not like, yeah, let's greenlight this, and I'm glad Stephanie kind of weighed in, and eventually we're gonna have to start prioritizing, you know, which ones, because there's only a limited amount of funds to make all these things happen. The one thing that I didn't see included in this list was the City Hall. Cedar mentioned something about City Hall demo, but was City Hall not going to be, a new City Hall not going to be included in this?
Question, Mr. Prather. This is really, the list that we have here are bond or CIP projects, and the new City Hall is not either one. That we were trying to work on how we can build up some reserves to pay for that. And so that is how we're looking at that one. So it would not take away from necessarily the CIP priorities or a future bond election. This is something we're trying to plan for separately. And it is in the CIP, but the CIP is like way down the, I would say it's like
It's a bond election. It identifies bond election, assuming we can't get through the P3 route. And this list is not supposed to be all encompassing and everything. This is just like, these have the nuances that we just want to make sure we're on the right path, because we've heard different directions or we get increased direction in the past. So we just want to make sure we're going the right direction with these projects.
And that one's not, I mean, we're working on it in the background, but we're definitely focused on what the community projects are for this.
Yes. Yes.
Can we go back to, we're out of bond, we completed bond, correct? Because there's something I wanted to say about the bond, yeah, because these are, tough. But anyway, regardless. On the bond, I'm gonna repeat what I said yesterday, is as long as we're ready to go to bond, we know what the numbers are gonna be, and assuming a positive outcome, we're ready to go once once that bond is over, not sit on it for a year or two before we even start while we wait for construction contracts to go up. And so for me to actually vote when it comes on the council agenda, if I'm still here, I'm gonna have to see that, and I also think that having a committee of our citizens vet that project like they did last time. In my experience, we have almost always had a bond committee, and some really good innovative ideas sometimes come out of those bond committees, especially the 1991. So I just wanted to go back and just say that that's what it's going to take to have my support, and understand that was your plan. So I wanted to get it said and recorded.
Yes, ma'am.
Now that we're on to other items, I'm going to turn back over to Chantal. I thought we were still in the bond.
So we're ready to move on to Purgatory Creek, or do we?
Whatever you've got next on your list.
I don't know if we're taking too long here. We keep going? Okay. So on Purgatory Creek, I think what we're looking for there is just hear the direction we're going, make sure we're on the right path, and tell if we need to correct. But the intention there is to get that plan, phase 1 and 2, get it fully designed. We're going to focus on grant funding of phase 1. But the decision point's going to come if we don't get these grants within the next 3 years. Do we want to include that as a bond election, or do we want to keep going after those grants? And so that's our plan right now. Are we on the right track? Do you want us to correct and just say no bond election or UCFE and get it done? And that's the direction we're looking for.
Okay, we're done with that. No? Okay, we have the discussion.
Directed discussion.
Okay. Mayor, council?
I don't have a lot to say on this one, but keep doing what you're doing. I'd like to see it stay on the CIP.
When you look at this list, it's stormwater, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars potentially projects. And I love the idea. I think that that's one of the reasons I was and went to DC is I do think there's just a ton of funding opportunities for a lot of these projects. It takes a lot of time to platform, vet them, engineer them, and these type of things. I think you can. Purgatory Creek project is all encompassing with all the different things.
We may need to swap mics.
We need you to speak up with the microphone.
We probably need to swap mics. We can't hear.
On this particular project, is this the one that we've been promoting for like several years to the neighborhood about how great it would be before we council even talked about it? This one I've got concerns about. As long as it's flood mitigation, I'm for it. But it seemed to be there was a lot of emphasis on trails and lighting, which is wonderful. But I'm sorry, we gotta get some stormwater stuff done in some neighborhoods where we got people flooding in their houses at times. And so that's why I'm a little hesitant on this one. I want whatever mitigation we can get. I know it's easier to do a project all at once, but I'm gonna need to know from the engineers, how much of this is mitigation? How much is it going to help? Who's still in danger as far as flooding in that neighborhood? Because I was here in the 70 and 72 flood. That was not Blanco Gardens flood. That was a Purgatory Creek flood.
Right. Yeah, it's approximately 80 to 90 homes removed from the floodplain with the project. And the trail component is added a lot for the grant, to help with the grant application process. I know Hays County is donating or contributing $2 million for the right-of-way acquisitions, with the caveat that it must be for the trails. Must go through the trails component on the property for the right-of-way. And so the way we've got it done is if we decide that we need to cut the trail from the scope because we can't afford it, we could always come back later and do that trail component. The design itself can accommodate the flood mitigation for sure, and you can always do the trail component later if it was a huge dollar amount and it was impacted by our ability to pursue grant funding. We got some options.
I'm all for including all of that into the design, but it's just whatever that extra expense is. Now, if that's 10% of the project and it helps us get funding, then I can change my mind on that. Just needed more information.
Any other additional comments? Okay, we're gonna move on to Bypass Creek.
Okay, so Bypass Creek,
Hang on a minute. If we don't hear from the other council members, what is the default? Are y'all leaving it on or not? Because if we're leaving it on, if we don't say yes, then why are we spending time right now?
I think, Chantel, we just want to make sure we get a consensus of the council. To make sure that everybody's telling us what they want, to make sure we know one way or the other.
All right, before we move on, Purgatory Creek Council, final.
I'm a yes, but like the mayor said, I agree with the comments the mayor brought up 2 minutes ago, but I will be a yes. But no trails, nothing extra like that. It's just the needs that we need, not wants. But I will be a yes, Mayor.
Well, I'm not going to say a lot about this, but when it rains 10 or 12 inches, I don't get a whole lot of sleep. And I thoroughly appreciate all the projects that have been done on that side of town in the community, and because it is provides some relief. But we all know that this is the one that's ultimately going to provide the infrastructure to provide some potential relief for problems. And so we talked about a lot about this in DC. I think this is something I would hope that the Corps of Engineers and the federal government would step up and help fund. And yeah, we're probably talking about several hundred homes and millions of dollars worth of businesses that could be potentially impacted by this. And I want to see this done, and I think this is a project that will do some good. And I can't wait for the day for when this project starts and the day that ends, because then potentially me and my neighbors can sleep a little better.
And Mr. Condor, just for clarification, please just kind of differentiate for the council the difference between Purgatory Creek and then the Bypass Creek, just to be sure that they know what it is that they're talking about.
No, we're on Purgatory Creek, yes.
I'm with the mayor on this and that. Any of the mitigation stuff needs to be done as soon as possible. And I know a lot of the mitigation stuff includes burying utilities, do all encompassing, get it all done. And it's expensive and complicated and tends to be a little more intrusive on the neighborhood. I could see Purgatory Creek improved, especially the trails, could potentially be done afterwards. Because you're not gonna be going back and potentially in front of someone's house and tearing the road back up. So I think that's one where we could potentially split it if we need to. And maybe that's what we need to do to get the mitigation done. If that's what we have to do to get the mitigation done sooner, I'm all for it.
I'm a yes on the flood mitigation efforts and yes on the trails and pedestrian lighting. I figured, while we're doing one, knock out the other, and also it kind of provides to the citizens that going through the construction zone when it's all said and done, and here's these nice new trails. And I think when people list reasons why they love San Marcos or love living in San Marcos, trails is usually like the river, the trails, and it's, enhance what we got. And I think this is an opportunity to do that. So I'm on board. Flood mitigation, funding source, whatever we can do to make it happen. I just want to see these projects start getting kicked off. And also, I'm a yes on the pedestrian lighting and trails aspect of it as well.
Okay, on Purgatory Creek, yes and no's from all council. They've all confirmed. Okay. The next is now Bypass Creek. Widen Bypass Creek near Gary Job Corps from IH 35 to SH 80. The Blanco Riverine improvements are considered a short-term option, but only mitigates up to a 50-year event. This is a long-term solution, mitigates up to a 100-year event. Mayor, council.
I think I kind of stated what I said earlier, and it's I don't think people quite realize the emotional drain it takes on the toll it takes on people. When I talk to my neighbors about, it's been 9 years this year, and I think about it almost weekly. Again. And it's one of those where I think we have a duty to try to fix this for people, so that, and I think this is a solution that can be done. I know I would prefer to have seen something done upstream with the Blanco to fix the Blanco maybe permanently for everybody for the region. But I know we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars there, and we're probably never going to be able to get that done. So this is what the Corps came up with as an option instead of doing a dam upstream. And according to the engineers, it will help. And so I want to see this done for my elderly neighbors, so when they go to sleep at night and it rains, they can sleep peacefully. And so I can raise my son in a neighborhood and not have to worry about it when it rains. And with all of these projects, when it comes to these stormwater, public safety and protection of people in their homes and in their apartments and in their property should be priority number one. And I hope that at some point in time, we can get this done so that everybody can kind of sleep in peace in my neighborhood. So I want to thank staff for all the time and energy they've put into this. I know there's been a lot of work, and there's going to be a lot of discussions of what this is going to look like. And thanks for staff for actually getting the Riverine project done too. I drive by a lot and look at it and think, this is an improvement. This is going to help. I know it's taken a long time to get there, but I'm looking forward to seeing all of these projects to fruition, so that all these neighborhoods can sleep in peace and not have to worry about their property and their lives.
I did want to chime in there. You made a comment about improvements on the Blanco River. The NRCS is actually in the middle of a study of the upper and lower Blanco River. They kicked that study off in 2023 with the hopes of having it completed in 2025. And with that study, they are actually evaluating 4 alternatives. One is no action. The other is a structural dam, which include maybe improving the dams and possibly bypass street. Looking at some non-structural, such as buyouts and things like that, and it's kind of a pie in the sky. So they're looking at 4 alternatives. We're hoping by 2025 we'll have an idea. But we really don't want to do anything until we know the outcome of that study. I think what we're looking for here is, hey, let's say that study comes back in it says no action, we know we're gonna wanna do something. So when do we wanna get serious about Bypass Creek? I can tell you it's not happening on the bond election. We're talking, we wanna start getting serious about Bypass Creek the next 5 to 10 years, or maybe the next 10 to 20, I guess is probably a good question there.
Yeah, and, I would have preferred to have taken all the money that we got last time and used it on a large project upstream. We weren't allowed to spend those funds outside the city limits, so it was patchwork. I think it is gonna help. It was a true value to the community for staff to go up there and council to go up there and get those federal funds. It's a big improvement, and, I'm willing to wait on these studies because I think the federal government is taking an interest in this. And I've said it over and over again, the Blanco River is the longest free-flowing river in the state of Texas with no flood control. And I repeat that every time I get a chance to get somebody to listen to me. And I do think people are listening, and people's lives are lost. And I would love it if the federal government would come back, or even the state would come back and say, hey, these are these other options. And if that's the case, then we need to take a buy-in on those regional approaches instead of this patchwork, try to fix this for this community, but doesn't help anybody downstream or upstream. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of those studies. And I think there may be a solution outside of that. And then if that happens, we as a community need to take a buy-in if that goes on upstream and participate in that, because ultimately that will help our community too.
I want to echo and support what Gleason was just saying about hopefully, a project like this, which, by the way, is the second largest, most expensive project on our list, the other one being the airport. We were discussing that we were expecting something like 90% of that cost being covered by the feds or the state. A project like this at $86 million that's desperately needed, and it is a big long-term project. I'm hoping we can lean on our federal partners to help pay for a majority of this, if possible. But San Marcos ultimately is a town between two rivers, and we are a very flash flood prone area. So these kind of big infrastructure projects are critical and necessary. Hopefully we can get the feds to see that as well and help participate in the costs.
I agree with my colleagues. They said pretty much everything I wanted to, so I definitely support you guys looking at those grants to come in, and thank you for taking a look at this.
I agree with my. I agree with my colleagues as well. Thank you.
I can't say anything any better anymore. I'm a big yes on this one.
Any other additional yes, no's, or comments from the council? All right, thank you. We're gonna go to the next fire admin and training facility. Complete design and construct a new fire administration, 10.2 million. Logistics and support services, 2.2 million. Driving track, 1.75 million. Technical rescue training facility, 2 million. And 3-story apartment, hotel, motel, burn building, 2.8 million, in accordance with the training facility master plan that was completed by Abercrombie Planning and Design in October 2019. Mayor, Council.
So this is one that we have identified as a bond election candidate. And I'll let Les speak a little bit more.
Yeah, this is part of the 2019 master plan that we did for the 16.82 acres at the airport. Phase 1 being the 2-story Class A burn building that we hope to open probably March or April of this year. We are currently utilizing Fire Station 5 for all admin and support functions for the fire department, which will very soon be 7+ stations and 125 personnel. We've cut every office in that building in half, or we've doubled up the occupancy or more. Our fire prevention office is now 11 people working out of what were 2 storerooms. So this is critical to us. We don't have a place for our folks to conduct driver training right now. Thank you to the airport. We're using, when we can get it, we're using some of the extra concrete at the airport to conduct driver training. We can't use Chief Standridge's track. Our apparatus are too heavy for the way that track is constructed. So this would give us a driving track where we can train, especially with the new tiller, give our guys a chance to practice driving off the streets before we put them on the streets. This morning, I woke up at 6:44 to a notification of smoke showing at the parlor downtown, and was extremely concerned of what that might be and how we could have heavy smoke showing from a fully sprinklered residential high-rise. Fortunately, it was found to be a trash compactor inside the parking structure, and our guys were able to get in there and put it out pretty quickly, but currently we do not have a place to train on multi-story high-rise firefighting tactics. And that is an entirely different operation than on-grade firefighting. So this would give us those abilities as well as technical rescue training. So this is part of that master plan. It can be done in one additional phase. It could be done in 3 or 4 additional phases. We have come to appreciate the most pressing need is for administration and support services.
While you're there, Chief, could you address, I know it's not right here, but this, I'd like to hear this publicly, is how we fight a fire in a multi-story building. I've heard people say we need 7-story ladders. Could you address that, please, sir?
Absolutely. The preferred method to fight a structure fire on the upper floors of a high-rise is from inside the building. Those buildings are required to have fire-rated stairwells, typically masonry and construction, CMU or concrete, and that affords us a degree of protection. We advance the hose lines inside, we connect to the standpipes, we pump water into the standpipes from our fire apparatus to upper floors, and then we connect to those standpipes on the floor below the fire. You stretch the hose up to the floor above so that when you're making the advance on the fire floor, you're actually pulling down and utilizing gravity to help you advance the hose line. As these things reach city blocks, it's not uncommon to have to advance a hose line 500 or 600 feet onto an upper floor of one of these apartment complexes. So it's a fairly complex operation, and it is extremely labor intensive. Anything above the 3rd floor is estimated to take more than 3 times the personnel that it takes to fight that exact same fire on grade. And that's been my concern as the city has continued to build more and more multi-story buildings. You've not added the staff to combat one of those effectively. Lastly, to the ladders. The ladders are what we call elevated master streams. Those are for defensive firefighting operations and rescue only. You could, a 100-foot ladder has a working length of about 75 to 80 feet. 80 feet would be really stretching that, an extremely steep set for climbing. We could probably rescue someone up to about 80 feet. That would only be about the 8th story. The hotel downtown, or excuse me, the apartment downtown is now 13 stories, well beyond the reach of any of our aerials. But we are buying 100-foot aerials. That's basically the longest working length that you can get. Both of our aerials and the reserves are 100 feet, but those are for elevated master streams for defensive operations. Once a building is deemed beyond saving, or it's no longer safe to operate inside, is when we would set those ladders, but they're not used for fighting fires on upper floors of apartments and so forth.
You just said that the city is building multi-story. The city is not. There are multi-story buildings being built in our city.
Correct.
Just wanted to get
Great
that out there.
clarification, yes ma'am.
Okay. So thank you all. I think this was something that was important to be said for the public. And so, speaking as someone who worked on the 7th floor of a building at the university, I asked these questions a long time ago and knew the answer, and I think I know what FDC stands for on those big connectors.
Fire Department Connection.
Yes. Okay, back to this one. I'll let others go first.
Chief, thank you for being here. I did have a question for you. I know the answer, but I want the public to hear. Is San Marcos Fire Department the only ones who will use these training tools?
No, sir. No, sir. As a matter of fact, we already have other agencies that want to come and train with us at our burn building that we're building now. The other thing that we will be able to do is to train with other fire departments that we routinely respond with, and that's everyone in Hayes County, along with Seguin and Braunfels and Canyon Lake from Comal County. We work pretty closely with all of those agencies. We do a ton of training with them. This would allow us to come and conduct multi-agency training at that facility in all the different disciplines.
Thank you very much. Well, this is public safety. I'm all on board with it because public safety affects us directly with, everybody that's gonna live here for hopefully the rest of their lives. I would like to definitely see this on a bond and give the citizens a chance to voice their opinion on this. Thank you, sir.
Fire department etiquette, do we charge other cities if they come and use our facilities?
There are certain places where we might, if they were coming to conduct training that we were not participating in, Mr. President, we might charge them for the consumables, pallets and hay and so forth that we might have on hand, but more or less we do not charge them. It's part of our mutual aid agreement. They have resources that we call upon from time to time, and they make those available to us at no charge. So this would be a resource that we would have to be able to make available to them at no charge. There's not a whole lot of money as far as generating revenue to be made. I don't want to mislead you.
I like it. I'm looking at all these multiple story buildings down on the horizon. Texas State doesn't have its own fire department. You have to be ready for those kind of potential disasters.
Sure.
My question is, where are we going now for this training? And is there any other cities close by within our radius that has this kind of setup for training?
Within an hour?
45 minutes or so.
San Antonio and Austin both have some. Yes, sir. We can't take our companies out of service to go to Austin or San Antonio. We have the bare minimum here, and to go and do that kind of training would take at least 3 companies, which is over half of what you have in the city currently. So we're not participating there. We have in the past used Buda, built a small burn building a few years ago, and we have gone and done some live fire training in that facility. But by and large, most of our members have not had live fire training since they've come to work here, because we don't have the ability to go and do it on the routine outside of the city based on resources. Otherwise, we'd have to have additional fire apparatus to both cover the city and for training and pay overtime to do that. We just don't have that money to do that.
Right. But in Braunfels and Seguin, do they have this kind of setup, or they don't?
They do not. Seguin doesn't have anything like this. New Braunfels is about where we are. They're kind of starting this discussion. And we hope that they'll build some things that we can go and train with them there, and they can come and utilize our facility as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
It's a yes.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to be a yes. I appreciate the insight. I think your comments help me understand the need in a very visual and specific way, and its alignment with our strategic goals and how it builds community. And I appreciate you talking about how y'all share resources with the folks that you regularly respond with. Thank you.
One question I have. The question I have is, are we looking to potentially build all this kind of at the property at the airport?
Yes, sir. 100% of this would be constructed at the property at the airport. There's 16.82 acres. It is master planned. The city council has blessed that master plan. And it includes the fire station that y'all were talking about earlier, which we have properly located to make sure that whenever it's built, that it will meet the FAA requirements for response to the end of both of the runways out there. As far as there are time requirements that you have to both make it to the end of the runway and discharge 100% of the extinguishing agents, be that foam or water, within a set amount of time. So we've actually positioned that station on the property at the training facility with a quick acting gate, and it actually intersects where the 2 runways connect, and it can go to the end of either one of them. And we've measured the time to make sure that we can meet all those requirements when that does come to fruition.
You know, the only thing that concerns me a little bit is the timeline, right? If we're looking at a bond potentially 2028, you know, you could be looking at 8 to 10 years out, and I just know how that process works. And it could be some constraints put on you that's going to be additional between now and then. That I just worry about the timeline a little bit of dragging that out. You know, I would be open to potentially putting some of this maybe in a CIP. I just don't see how we're going to do that. And I do think this is what bonds are for, right? And I think the public safety side of things always does well in bonds for the most part. So I'm completely open to the bonds, but you know, if something comes back, this doesn't include the other fire station, which this is all just the other stuff in the master plan. So, and it doesn't look like we're going to probably be doing anything out at the airport for several years. So I'm completely open to putting this on a bond.
I was just going to clarify, it also takes about 2 years to get through the design process for something like that, so it lines up well with the bond election, assuming we get going in the next year or two.
And I'm a yes on this one. However, I think it would be very helpful to the taxpayers if the folks that we train with, if we built one of these kinds of structures first, and of the things that we're doing, if Seguin's doing something, if they built something different, it would be a nice group effort instead of duplicating. Maybe at the end of 25 years, everybody has what they need. But if these are people that we're training with anyway, if we could talk them into sort of a group plan, that would be very welcome for me. But other than that, I'm a yes for the bond.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Mayor, in that if over the next few years, Seguin and New Braunfels does something different, I hope we take that into consideration. I know I would love to collaborate with them to do a joint project. I think that's something regionally we all could benefit from, and I think it's a better use of taxpayer dollars. So over the next few years, if New Braunfels, Seguin, and some of these other departments want to look and collaborate on something, we'll be completely open to that, and I think that's a good use of funds. And probably get the project done a little quicker, too.
To be clear, we're each funding our own thing, but we're just figuring out, we do project A, if somebody did project A, we hold off on whatever A is, we do B, and then somebody else does C. So that'd be great if we make it happen. If not, we need to do what we need to do.
Okay. Any other additional comments? Thank you, Honorable Council and Mayor. This brings us at 10:04 right now. Do we push forward or do we take a 10-minute break?
There's just 2 more items.
Yes, and it's the parks.
So I'm not sure if y'all want to go ahead and finish this part and then we can.
Okay. The next will combine is it Quill Creek Parks and also Gary Softball Parks. Renovate concession building, restrooms, fencing, bleachers, and sidewalks. Mayor, Council.
I'll go first. I thought we were doing Gary softball. What is this different from what we're doing that the whole season's going to be? The fields are unavailable.
So what we are constructing right now, the recent contract the City Council approved is for Phase 1, which is for the infrastructure improvements, water, wastewater, parking improvements as well. What is provided on your sheet is Phase 2, which addresses ADA accessibility to the restrooms as well as the aging concession stand area.
Are they usable now? Yes. Are they usable in 10 years? No. For the record, she said yes to the first question and no to the second one, which is kind of what I thought maybe. Okay.
Just want to confirm we're going down that path of putting them on the bond election.
I can be a yes. We've still got to figure out what in the heck we're going to talk about with Quail Creek, but on a bond election. But yes. I'm for moving the conversation forward.
And just for mayor and council and the community's information, Quail Creek is, we will start that planning this year. Likely in the fall due to, we do have some other contracts that do have priority for ARPA funding and CDBG funding that we have to get those projects done first. So it'll probably be early fall before we do the public kickoff for the Quail Creek master planning. Once we have that, that will include the citizen input of what they want to see, and then the future design and cost as well.
This is one I'm super excited about. I was really happy to see Quail Creek get purchased with POSAC money. I think that was a good use of funds. The east side has been desperately in need of additional parkland. If we talk about trying to implement a trail system to connect the whole community, that would be an integral part of that. And there's a lot of acreage to have something done. I'm looking forward to the conversations in the community of what the community wants out there. You know, there's going to be a lot of discussions, and I think it's going to have a real impact what we do out there on the rest of the park system. So, yeah, I mean, I can't wait to have those conversations. That's going to be the fun one of what does the community want, and what could we fund, and what can we really transform that into for additional parkland, green space, whatever goes on out there. So, I mean, I hate to see it wait till a bond. I mean, that's a long time to, it's going to be a lot of money. I know it is, but yeah, let's have the discussion on the master plan first and see what the community really wants to see out there. And if it does take a long time for it to come to fruition, we own the land, it's there, and something will get done with it. And I'm optimistic and looking forward to seeing something good happen out there.
I said that exactly. I'm very happy that this property is now part of San Marcos. Please go ahead, go forward. Let's see what you guys can do.
I feel the same way, but I do have a question. Years back, maybe 5 years ago, I thought that we fixed those restrooms to make them ADA compliance. Maybe in the baseball fields, but I remember we put some money aside for that. I just don't want to go back and have to redo what's been done.
So it has been in the CIP for a number of years, you are recalling correctly. It just has not, we had to get phase one done first. So we have had it in the plan for a number of years, but we needed to get to phase one first and before we could get to phase two.
Thank you, that's all I have, Mayor. I'm a yes.
Are you a yes on both of them? Quail Creek and Gary Softball? You're a yes on Quail Creek. Okay. Question, how did those restrooms, that complex, that building in that old, how did they get built not ADA compliant, or did the ADA rules change and we were and now we're not? Which has happened to us at the city over the years.
So you may be recalling that we did renovations in 2013 to the youth side, which that did build new restrooms, new concessions, new field improvements. So on one side of the Gary softball complex, those all are ADA compliant, they're beautiful. The adult side is the older side and aging. So while we have tried to accommodate, I mean, they have stalls that are ADA. It's the grading to get into the building that is consistently an issue. Ground shifting, it's a very old facility. So we have done our very best to provide access, but it's very small. So there's only a few stalls in it. So we're working with what we have. It's not that they're completely inaccessible, but this would provide additional improvements to the facility.
Okay, so since we're looking at bond for maybe 2028, you're going to start the input process this fall. Does that mean that we hope to have a plan or plan alternates in time for the bond issue? Okay, she said yes. All right, thank you. That's what I was assuming.
And the only thing I'll throw out there is that if this does look like, and depending on what the master plan looks like for the parks system, is that I would encourage that, we don't let it sit idle for 8 to 10 years, that we do something temporary, whether it's open some trails along the river back there, come up with if it looks like it's going to be an all-encompassing project out there, that we at least get it opened up for some use of some capacity, so that the people on the east side don't wait another 8 to 10 years for the Cape Park or for Quail Creek to get opened up, that there's some sort of a temporary plan of some usage between now and then.
Yeah, I'm a yes on both these, and I think city sports facilities are so important. Having a daughter and watching her play soccer with all the other families, you really see that it really adds to the community when your city has facilities like that, the families can gather and watch kids play sports. And I'll share with y'all a short story. I grew up in Arlington, Texas, moved to San Marcos in 2001, but the first time I came to San Marcos was when I was 14. I came for a soccer tournament. And I remember after the soccer tournament, my mom and I walked around this area right here, and I was so blown away with these big trees and the river. And I remember saying, like, I'm going to live in San Marcos one day. But what brought us here was a sports tournament. So these kind of investments pay off in ways that we don't even know. From a Saturday afternoon with your family, or to people coming visiting your town and spending money at the outlet malls, or hopefully people coming and saying, you know what, this is a beautiful place, I would like to live here one day. So I'm a yes on all of it.
I am a yes. I recently did a deep dive on things that reduce crime, and it was interesting to see the very recent literature that illustrates how investment in green spaces and recreational spaces for youth recreation decreases certain types of crime. So I think it aligns. It aligns with our strategic goals of public safety, but to my colleagues' points about quality of life and sense of place, I think investment in these two items is important.
And that concludes our input for this one.
Thank you. The next item is the Animal Shelter and HHW facility. Renovation and expansion of the animal shelter due to the 90% live outcome resolution and initiative. Relocation of the HHW facility to 750 River Road. This construction will also include office space for resource recovery, parks and recreation, and meeting space. Resource recovery and general funding will be used. We will need fiber for future staffing. Must be completed before City Hall demo. Mayor, Council.
Let me jump in there real quick. A lot of this project was shown because of the large dollar amount, the $12 million that was earmarked for 2026. Based off, again, the direction that we do the bond election, that pushes a lot of projects maybe that would have been funded to the bond election column. And so I think we can probably hold off on most of the conversation because we need to do back some more investigative work, I think. We got to look at the feasibility study to see, do we really want to put that site next to the existing animal shelter, or should we consider other locations? So we really want to kind of put that one on pause, I say, until let's come back and do some more investigative work on that particular project.
I think most of us were probably going to be, we really need more information, so that's a wise choice.
Yeah, and this is another one where I think this would make a good bond project. It was going to support the animal shelter, right? The expansion of it to try to get to the 9% live outcomes. So I know it's a long time to wait, but we're not probably looking at getting City Hall situation fixed for quite some time. So I think if this had to wait for then, I think it could. And that's where I'm at on that one.
And it's also going to be something that we need to look at when it comes to the regional partnership and what the implications are, depending on what decisions are made in regard to that. So I think there's still some work that we need to do on this one, just to kind of really have some more conversation internally and then also with city council.
I'm gonna have a real problem with the hazardous waste in that particular location.
So based off the feedback, we're gonna go back and re-look at some of this. I don't see a whole lot making a change to the 25 CIP. A lot of the stuff we talked about is gonna impact future. So we're gonna, over the next 6 months or so, we'll try and fine tune this, and we'll come back to the 26 CIP and make sure these changes we discussed today reflected on that. For that, well, we've gone through the list and we covered all the issues for the CIP side.
Thank you. All right, that brings us at 10:16. We're going to take a 10-minute or a 15-minute break? 10 minutes. So we will be back at 10:27, we'll say 10:27, 27 after. Thank you, everyone.
Return from our recess, and we will continue with Vision Day 2.
Thank you, Mayor. So this comes to a part where we are going to revisit from yesterday as we looked at all the priorities, and we were able to group together all of our ones, meaning they were P1s for us, priority number 1. And so in order to have a little bit more clearance on, under those P1s, top priorities of that, we are going to re-summarize them, and then from the council, mayor and council, we would like to get from you all, is it an A, is it a B, or a C for you with that particular one, to give us an idea of the priority of that one particular that we're discussing. Does that make sense, or what additional questions about that process you may have? All right.
Let me give a little context. So last year we've had between 1.5 and $2 million in capacity to fund additional things. And so with sales tax the way that they are now, we're not real sure, obviously, what we're going to have capacity for. So all we're wanting to do is make sure that we know what your priorities are for FY25 for us to really look at. If we have enough funding to take care of all of them, then we can have those conversations during the budget workshops. But if there are some additional priorities that you have that are going to be something that we need to prioritize further, then we just want to make sure we have that information. So that's really the purpose of what we're asking y'all to do, is just to prioritize the number ones and make sure that we know what your list of priorities are and looking at that as we go further. It's also going to set up nicely for the strategic plan discussion, which is the second part of this and final part of this day that we have today, is because it's going to see how you're supporting your strategic priorities and making sure that we're confirming your strategic priorities are still the same, and if there's any changes that need to happen with that as your strategic priorities as part of this visioning process. Does that make sense, or questions?
I wonder then if it would be helpful as we give our input to be very specific on how we imagine each of these ones align with the current strategic goals or something. I know we touched on it but explicitly.
And so Hayden and Carrie stayed last night, and they actually worked to do that. So they have all your ones, they added all the ones up, they put them with the strategic priorities already to make sure that those really did align so that y'all could look at that. So that was, kind of the method behind the madness, if you will, in terms of how we tried to approach this, is that, a vision without budget is something that can't be operationalized, right? So I know for some of you it has felt kind of funky that we're doing some of the budget, part of it, but we need to make sure that we're grounded in what's realistic and what we can do. Because sometimes the visionings have been in the past in a way that, okay, well, yeah, these are all great ideas and great goals, but how do we really start to break it down into making it be operationalized and put into action? So that's where we're trying to really give y'all and us and the public a lot more concrete examples of how we're gonna support our strategic plan through your budget that you're gonna be, going through the budget process for this upcoming year. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I appreciate that, Hayden, for president. Thank you. And Carrie.
Thank you. So we can go through those, and then, Hayden, do we have the prioritized list to put on the screen?
We have it on the screen. Carrie is making printouts.
Okay, maybe can we make somehow to show the strategic priorities, because I know you have the column over to the right that actually shows, so can we hide some things maybe?
And Stephanie, if it helps, as I give the descriptor, I'll also interject that strategic goal as well, as a
Perfect.
reminder.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you, Chantel.
You're welcome.
And I've got a couple of questions, and one is, what's the dollar amount for item 5, employee benefits, et cetera? It says 5% of personnel costs. Y'all know what that is. I don't have a number for here.
Do we have the number, John, of what it is for general fund? Yeah, hold on just 1 second.
Yes, we do. We sent that to Hayden early this morning. So he would be able to pull it up and show what the cost is.
I think that has all the funds. Let's go through and look at what general fund is.
I think it's more than $1.98, and I'm pretty sure it's less than 10 million, but where it falls in between there, I just am unsure.
Yes, so it shows that for general fund, for 25, 3.79.
Right. It's what?
3.79 million.
For this next year? Or
Yes.
for that time period that we're talking about?
Yes, but again, that's 5% of personnel costs total. We're still gonna look at what we can actually afford.
Okay.
Yeah, the total personnel cost in the general fund is around $75 million. So if you increase that by 5%, that sounds about right.
Is that across all funds or general funds?
That's just the general fund.
Okay, and while we're waiting for printouts, which if council feels like you need these, I've got the list that I printed last night that I got, but I had a feeling y'all wanted to go see them all at once as you're making your decisions and we group them. But maybe just a recap of these, or I really do want to briefly revisit what's now item 18, the Mitchell Center. Is that one left that we will continue to discuss?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, that one was left. The direction y'all provided was just that we were gonna have more discussion, so that's gonna come up in a future meeting.
And that someone was going to get back with us on the historical significance, and we would have that information before we make any kind of decision.
Yes, ma'am, and also make sure we're visiting with the stakeholders that are involved and, to make sure that we have all the information. So yes, I understand that Allison does have some information on the historical significance.
It's been given to her, yes.
Yes, so she just wasn't part of the conversation yesterday to be able to bring that to us. So
Okay.
I have assured some of the concerns that, hey, we'll look at that with Allison and also with them to understand
Okay.
the context.
So we can leave that one where we left it yesterday, although I was going to change to a no and we'll consider instead of a yes and we'll consider, but I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Okay, do y'all need any further information on any of the ones that we did yesterday? Maybe if we hide the column that's got all the information and reset the rows, we could see more on the screen.
This is more for my peers. I wonder if it might be helpful to, like, as we talk about these things, contemplate some of the questions that Mr. Gleason shared were kind of his like framework or like his strategy to approaching this. So I wrote it down yesterday. He said, what is important? You know, what do we have to do? What can we do to save, I think, money in the long run, and what can we do to bring in more money? That was helpful to me, like just to take notes. So yeah. And when I talk about haphazard, I didn't mean that as an insult. I understand this is like a, you know, from 1 year to like this year, you all have made, I think, really awesome strides in getting more of a productive conversation about planning and the budget. So I didn't mean it like as shade. But that's what I talk about when it's like helpful to me to have some kind of guiding, almost like matrix to like ensure we have consistent, critical conversations on everything. So I'm just like, I don't know if I got those questions right or if I got them all, but those are the ones that Mr. Gleason shared yesterday that I found helpful.
Further questions on item 9? I may have missed it, the 25,000, and we're just talking about FY25 at this point in time, correct? Or no? For this prioritization that we're doing right now?
Yes, because your ones, we would be taking that as 25.
Okay, so what is the 25,000 for on the DEI?
The 25,000 for the DEI, so Grisel started at the very end of June 2023. So we have 3 months of fiscal year 2025 that need to be covered. So that would take through the rest of fiscal year 2025.
Okay, I didn't realize that, I was just thinking we were talking about fiscal years, and, okay. So in order to get the 2 years, that's what we need to?
No.
No?
So she started at the end of June 2023.
Okay.
That the funding will go through June 2025. In July 2025, that
Yeah.
ARP funding,
No, I
so
get that.
this is July, August, and September.
Yes, in order to make it a fiscal year.
Correct.
That's what I meant to say.
And
Okay.
one other clarification for that one, as well as a couple of these other ones, we do still have the ARP funding that we are trying to allocate, well, that we have to allocate by the end of this year. So there are a few of these items that we could possibly look at any funding that becomes available.
I think what I would propose if council is interested in moving forward with continuing the DEI initiatives is to go ahead and fund the other years that we can from ARPA, and then look at transitioning that into the city budget, like maybe after 2026.
Okay, I'm still confused on the 25 because we said to fund 2 years, and it didn't matter when the year started, when the year ended.
But it's 2 calendar years that y'all funded and not 2 fiscal years because we started her.
We said 2 years. I mean, it didn't matter to me which the 2 years was, so I don't know.
2 years. So we started early.
You're wanting to extend the 2 years in order to get to the end of a fiscal year?
No. We
Yeah.
need to extend past the 2 years in order to get to the end of the fiscal year.
That's what I just said?
Yes.
Okay. So we're
That's the
looking at
25,000.
a longer period of time, so what's the difference, what's the urgency to extend and get it to the end of the fiscal year?
Because whenever you approve next year's budget, you need to include additional funding in that budget. Not this year, but next year.
In order to get 2 years and 3 months?
Yes, correct.
We said fund it for 2 years. I'm still unsure as to why we're trying to get that extra 3 months just to get to the end of the fiscal year.
Those 2 years did not sync up with the fiscal year from when she started.
So it's 2 years and 3 months, and so that's what we're trying to just cover is the extra 3 months. But But bigger than that is if council is wanting to have this be operationalized like we talked about yesterday, then one solution or one recommendation could be that we would go ahead and have y'all funded from ARP monies through 2026 as is eligible, and then it would be operationalized into the city budget in 2026, or 2027, I guess it would be fiscal year 2027.
Can we change the title on 3? I know it was the single-use container ban that kind of brought this up to maybe a higher level, but I think what we heard at the workshop or the work session is that we need to, even without that, we need to provide more funding and assistance. So I would feel better if this were not solely attributed to the single-use container. I'm still good with it. I just think that we need to retitle it.
The only thing I'll say there is that the public safety staffing plan, my understanding is that's the #1 priority that the council wants funded. And so that multi-year staffing plan, which is the fire and the police, based on the staffing studies, that would be the #1 priority. So if, for example, our revenues don't come in and we're not able to fund anything else, those would go. The marshal that had been requested for mid-year funding would not go because, again, we wouldn't have the revenues. What Mr. Huffman said during the work session was that we would go forward with implementing with or without the marshal, as long as council had the expectations that the enforcement aspect of it was going to be relational, right? They're going to do the best that they can. So if there's enough money to be able to fund the public safety staffing plan, the fire police staffing studies that you said is #1, and there's enough money to cover the one marshal, then we would be looking at that. So that's the reason why they were tied together, is because the one marshal, yes, he needs the marshal, but it was really because we were trying to make sure there was more coverage for the Kanban enforcement as well. So we can retitle it however y'all would like. I just wanted to provide that clarification.
What do y'all think?
I'm indifferent either way, but if you're on board with changing it to simplify it, that's fine.
The Kanban, regardless, if that's something we move forward and becomes statute and law and that kind of stuff, but couldn't we also, we need improvements to public safety along the river. So I think regardless, Kanban or not, we need to start staffing up and increase funding for public safety, marshals, that kind of stuff along the river.
Kind of going back
Part
and
of this
forth.
was, sorry, Mr. Davis.
That's okay.
All I was going to say is that, remember, a part of this is also for the communications plan. So about 100,000 of it was the communications plan. So if that helps to give y'all an idea, if you do decide to separate it and make it, be a different title, just so that y'all have that information.
Yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth on how to kind of label this, because there is the additional marshals need anyway, and then there's the Kanban, and then there's the communications and the signage and all the things that go with it. And I do want it to be a permanent funding source. And I think, saying that we've got a $255,000 upfront for just the single-use container ban, I think there is a public safety portion of that anyway. And I wouldn't mind separating that out to kind of explain that to constituents, so maybe a little easier if somebody sees that. So that's where I'm at.
I'm having trouble with $100,000 on communications to send that out. That's a lot of money, and we've got a lot of other needs. I know we need to communicate this, but we've said that we're gonna be kind to people that first year and do a lot of education. I can't go 100,000 on that. I just can't. We've got too many other needs.
And to clarify that, that would be signage. That would also be, for the education efforts. And so the proposal for the 100,000, 50 of it is general fund. That's educating our locals and making sure that our local people would know what the expectations and what rule changes the council implements. And then the other 50 would be hot tax funding. So that's for the visitors and making sure that our visitor campaigns have it. So just to provide that further clarity that it's looking at about $50,000 for local education, local information, and then 50 for out-of-town visitors, but then also like signage and things like that.
And is signage inside of this? Because I thought signage was additional.
We were thinking signage would be inside of this. Right, that would be part of the 100. What we are going to find out is how much of the signage could be funded through HOT and how much could be funded through general too as well, Mayor.
I'm willing to be a little aggressive on the education side and the communication side, especially up front. Especially if we're talking about, we may have a little bit of light enforcement, so to say. The education side of it could potentially save us a lot of money on the back end. And I don't think it's going to be something that we're going to need to spend that kind of money on year after year. It's just roll this out with as much as we can to try to get as much voluntary compliance as possible. And so, I knew that was going to be an expensive component. I'm really happy to hear that we are exploring hot tax money for this. I think that's a good use of it. So I think that you're looking at general, hot tax, public safety. I think it's multifaceted. And I think breaking that up could be important. And I'm perfectly fine with if it takes a six-figure education component at the very beginning. So I think the years after that, that's going to drop off precipitously, especially with the university participating too.
And this is anticipated, Mayor, for one time. It's not something that we're looking at for year over year, because the hot visitor, promotions can start to roll that into their normal campaigns. And then the university has said that they're going to take care of, getting their signage to jive up as much as they possibly can with ours. So if that helps to at least look at that. The other thing is that I have asked Ms. Surley, and I don't know, I don't want to put her on the spot, but I have asked her to look at some of the allocation that council provided with American Rescue Plan monies for communications to see how much of that she feels like she could absorb through that funding source. So definitely looking at, okay, what's the least impact to the general fund and how can we make that happen in that one time that we need upfront.
So how much of this was personnel?
None of it.
None of the 255. So where?
None of the 100,000, sorry, let me clarify.
I'm nowhere of the 255.
The 155 is what we were talking about for personnel, and that was for the marshal.
That's what I thought. And that's not in item 1 up here, this mid-year. That's got police and fire.
The one that has the multi-year public staffing? No, that's over and above. That's only police and fire.
Okay, so we've got 155 for personnel that we need anyway. And that's where I was going, education for this other and additional
yes, ma'am.
Personnel, because it says enforcement, but this doesn't say additional personnel in here.
Okay.
And we're saying this is for single use. And when that's the front page of the newspaper, we're going to spend $255,000 on that. Some people will be thrilled, but that's a lot of money, and I think that we're not being clear about what this money is being used for.
And I think that's great feedback, and we can do it again, whatever y'all would like to do. I think we were just trying to be upfront and transparent that pushes up the need for marshals. Right now, we can continue to operate, albeit it's not at ideal staffing levels, just like it's not with police and fire. However, it pushes it up even further as a priority in order to successfully implement the CAN ban. So that's the reason why we grouped them together. If it's more transparent to do another way, we're happy to do that.
At least list underneath what it is.
Sure.
Because it's not just Kanban.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We can do that.
Something back to the community is going to be really important, because they're going to look at this dollar figure and say, what are we getting for a bang for a buck? And the fact that we might be able to use some ARPA funds or hot tax funds for one-time expenditures, and then they may be getting additional Marshall out of there, which, yeah, may not be in the staffing plan today, but it is for the future, and that is additional public safety. So, yeah, I think dividing that up and having additional information out there, so when it does get printed or people talk about it, that they understand that this is about environmental, this is about quality of life, this is about tourism, this is also about public safety.
How much of my tax money is being used for this is the question that we're gonna need to answer, and why is it so high?
And if I could just add, what we also don't want to say is, just like you've indicated, 100,000, whether it's paid hot tax or general fund, is a lot of money for communication. Our staff is wonderful about stretching a dollar, and remember, Ms. Case has talked a lot about, we also want to be successful if we have the various zones, that we have trash receptacles and emptying. So I think what I would really indicate is, if you give us that $100,000 balance, a budget, we will go at as much as we can within that budget, instead of trying to just segregate it so tightly that we're kind of caught. I mean, our staff works well together, and I think departmentally we'll stretch that for communications and improvements in whatever we need.
That's kind of thought too, with CDB, right, you already have an ad campaign, you add it, right, there's additional cost, but you're stretching that dollar to already part of your programs, or if you've got flyers on tourism, or, hey, this is something that we are doing that could potentially be added into any campaign that you might be doing and be creative with it. It's not going to be its own thing.
Well, I know they can stretch a dollar, and that's why I thought they didn't need all that much, but we'll see.
I guess I have want some clarity when we talk about communication plans. Yeah, $100 seems like a lot of money for a communication plan, but community buy-in is necessary. So I think personally, beyond communication, I think what's necessary is like a PR marketing campaign to secure buy-in, right? Because like what's the use of printing a bunch of flyers or signs if there's not a strategic plan that taps into like our neighbors' morals and values and all of that, right? So I think that, right, like I said, education is one thing, marketing to secure buy-in and change behavior is different, and well worth $100K, like point blank period, just towards that. So while I do believe y'all can stretch dollars, I do think it's also important to name what, or like expand on what community or like the communication plan is. Because if it's like a PR marketing campaign aimed at changing behaviors, then I feel like $100K is usually what, that's a pretty good budget, and signs and stuff.
No, the PR marketing campaign is absolutely something that we are looking at doing. It's going to be much more than just flyers, social posts, the normal things. It's going to be much more in depth. Right now, what we just need is to know the final of the ordinance and everything that y'all are going to be passing, so that we know exactly what to be passing along to our tourists and to our residents.
And to add to that, hi, Rebecca, Destination Services. So to add to that, the actual campaign would be separate from our everyday campaign. Right now, we don't advertise per se the river. We advertise some activity, but not tubing and so forth. So yes, it would be a completely separate campaign with the messaging, the educational messaging, the longevity messaging. It would just be different messaging. So yes, and it would be working with Lauren and the communications team. There is a task force currently working, but once we know the language of the actual ordinance, then that's how we will move forward.
And it would be about preserving and protection of the river, all the things that I know have been important and have been said by council.
Thank you. We now have in front of us go ahead.
Okay. Absolutely. So that was my comment on the communication plan part, but I feel like I have to name that if we were being for real about safety, we'd be contemplating community-based interventions to reducing crime. We'd be having like community-wide conversation on what safety means, throwing around another marshal or two and calling it safety is lazy. I get the conversation about the implementation and all of that, but I just think, to the mayor's point, like, tell us how much money is going where our tax dollars are going, but just saying, we need this because justifying it with the can ban and then being like, safety. I feel like that's very, just irresponsible. So I just I feel like I need to name that for my neighbors at home who are like, wait, but can't, they're still like not convinced that park rangers could handle it, right? I mean, if we're using the can ban implementation as a justification for more marshals, like we didn't contemplate if park rangers, like the feasibility of that. But if we're talking about long-term park rangers, I feel like it's important to be specific about that too, right? Like we're talking about park rangers, how it relates to safety long-term throughout the years, right? I feel like there are two different conversations that are getting convoluted, and it almost feels a little bit manipulative and disingenuous. I'm not expecting any comments, and I kind of don't want to hear any of that, but I just felt like I needed to name that.
Thank you.
So before we move on, I need to clarify something that Mr. Locke just came in and told me. So the number that we were reading on general fund for the 5% of personnel costs, they were not split up between civil service and non-civil service. So that included public safety, and so the public safety contracts. So for about the 200, give or take, public safety sworn positions, it's about 1.3 million of that $3.2 million number, and it's 1.9 million for about the 800 plus employees that we have, that will be spread across. So if that helps to give some ideas in regard to what that looks like for what we were talking about on the 5% of personnel costs, it's actually 1.9 million because the others are contractual based on the meet and confer agreements.
But it's still costing us money.
Yes, it's costing money, but 1.3 million has already been agreed to based on the agreements that we have with police and fire. So 1.9 is new money that we're talking about. That's the 5% of overall personnel costs for the 800 plus employees
But
that
it's
we
not
have.
3.79, it's 1.9, but we're paying the others. So you're saying it's just because that's already required and not,
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's already been approved.
Okay, thank you, everyone. In front of us is the Council Visioning 2024 budget priorities, the ones, and we are now, I'm going to head into prioritizing the ones with A, B, C from mayor and council, and of course, there may be some additional comments or questions that the staff can help with as well. So when we begin, if we go ahead and begin with the number one of the ones, we have the multi-year public safety staffing plan. And just a reminder with the descriptor, fiscal year 24, mid-year, add 4 firefighters, 320,000, plus 2 police officers, 232,000. Fiscal year 25, anticipated, request additional police officer, $116,000, plus SAFER grant for fire. And just a reminder how this aligns with our strategic plan, public safety, core services, and fiscal excellence, community safety, adequately staffed public safety departments to address community safety. Mayor, council.
Are you asking for what goes in Group A?
A, B, or C of your priority?
Do you want to do Group A first, or do you want us to go through and just on our list say 1 is A, 2 is R, 3 is S?
Yes, that would be, I think it'll expedite it a little bit.
But
Or do you would like to do one per to make sure we are clear with the A's, the B's, and the C's?
Well, what I'm looking at is, it's hard to do the C's, but what I'm looking at is the dollar amount. Because when we're talking about one thing being 1.9 million, then does maybe that take up all the A capacity? And it's like the PALS thing is only 45,000. So I'm thinking, does that fit in? We can get that into A because it's a lower amount than some of the others. So on the dollar wise, what do we?
I mean, I think we really want to understand if it gets to a point where we really cannot afford to fund some things. I mean, we're really hoping that sales tax comes in. And so if it doesn't, then it's a very different conversation, and we need to understand what those priorities look like for council. Understand that it's going to be fluid. We still have the whole, 9 months that we have forward to revisit this stuff, but it would be nice to know at least at the beginning where we're at right now with that. So I would hesitate to start putting a dollar amount on it, and because those smaller dollar amounts end up equaling larger dollar amounts. So that's why it would be helpful to just have, now if things are going to be revenue neutral and we have a place like where you're saying, hey, we could probably take that from HSAB, then that could be something that's a consideration that takes it up, right? Because it's not necessarily new money or additional money. And y'all said that was a last resort if needed.
Well, and municipal court doesn't need money for this year, so do we even need to talk about it and give it a category?
What I will
Do we
say
think
is
that's
they may need money this year because we allocated a certain amount, but depending on once they get a lease, it may actually end up being higher than what the budgeted cost is.
I'm looking at anticipated costs, not applicable or not available. I'm not sure which it is. So should we just not look at the dollar amounts and just
look at the priorities is what I would say.
For the first item, are there any questions from council or mayor for clarifying to get you to the point of A, B, or C in your priority ranking for that one?
The first one here that I think the HSSB, the Human Services Advisory Board money, potentially for the, for PALS, I think would be a good one to move over, then we don't, maybe that just comes out of that. It is, but that's true. But I mean, do we just deduct that from the amount we give Human Services that's already allocated to them, and then that way it becomes revenue neutral? Or expenditure neutral?
The direction that we heard yesterday is that y'all would be willing to look at it, but it was kind of a last resort. So y'all would like for us to try to find the $45,000, but you'd be willing to look at that. And again, we're going to look and see other funding sources if we can. We're going to look to see, because we're going to have some ARPA monies that are going to be left over based on people that haven't used them. We have to make sure that they're all being allocated. So we can bring some of those things back. And so if we can do ARPA, then we're going to bring that to y'all and say, hey, I think we can do ARPA and we don't need to take it from HSAB. But just want y'all, again, to have just the general parameters that you give us. We're still going to fine tune things, and we're going to continue to have conversation and dialogue throughout these next 9 months. It's not like this is a one and done.
Yeah, and it's just one where if sales tax continues to come in down, and that's one where I think we just take the money that we've been allocating for human services and just move it over.
Right.
And that eliminates the question on that one at least.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then on the municipal court, you did say there could be some potential additional needs there yet. I mean, that's something we have to discuss, or whatever we need to do on that one. That's, if everything on here that has to be done, that's one we don't have any choice.
And the direction that we received yesterday on that is that there was a preference to continue to lease and not buy, and we would look at that being part of the overall City Hall complex when we do that. But we definitely need to get something and get them to have a home for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, because we could still be looking at potentially 8 to 10 years pretty easily.
We're hoping not, but.
Yeah, I'm just.
But realistic as far as, yes, I get having a very conservative perspective in that regard as far as the number of years.
If we go with public safety and what we have to deal with, then from my list, into the A column, I'm putting 1, multi-year public safety staffing plan, municipal court relocation, number 4, number 5, employee benefits. And part of the reason there is if we don't keep up and we lose people, that's long-term retraining, and departments just aren't at 110%, which I think most of our departments are, whenever you lose people and have to restart over. And then I'm going to go ahead and, let's see, 9. I want to put animal shelter, but then cybersecurity's got to be in there. I put that in the employee category. We need people, we need that done, we need to make sure our systems are secure. So that's where I'm starting with my A's.
I second the mayor's priority. I think that was a really good rundown for how that should be prioritized.
You're asking us right now which ones are our A's?
Yes.
Okay. I'll let other people go first because I at least have to work through the rest. Does somebody else want to go?
Thank you. Okay, for A's I have 1, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, and 10.
I was really close to the mayor here. Number 1A, I want to see number 3 implemented. And I'm moving that up partially because of the public safety aspect of it too. I know we're having some discussions of what that exactly means public safety wise, but it does for me. 4, number 3. Number 4, absolutely A. Number 5A, and number 10A. And I think that's all I have for A's. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to start with saying that number 1 is not my A, and just a little bit of justification for that. So again, the police absorb the vast majority of our budget. Still not convinced that an increase in officers will result in an increase in safety. And again, I challenge everyone to contemplate what factors contribute to safety, what are ways to prevent crime, what are ways to contribute to wellness. From like 2022 to 2023, like when we contemplate the fiscal year 2023 budget, there was like an 18% increase in the police budget compared to the 2 previous years. So I think we have steadily resourced this entity more so than any other fund. However, having said that, I appreciate the conversation around number 3. I think this is bridging that, or filling the gap on thinking about ways to prevent crime and increase safety. I think it's 3 online. Oh, just kidding, I'm looking at the side. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Staff. Number 2, so mental health diversion, I think is an A for me. Again, what increases safety? Having people, increasing wellness and addressing very prevalent issues that intersect with crime, which is mental health. And then number 5, I don't know if that's on it or we all just kind of agreed on it, about the employee benefits. But if I have to rank that with ABC, I think A is there. Yeah, if we don't pour into the folks who have been coming up with all this stuff, then we're gonna lose them to other areas. I just think it's, yeah, number 5. And then number 7, again, when we talk about our strategic goals, and safety is one of them, getting people their basic needs is what contributes to wellness and safety, and I think $70,000 is a good bang for our buck with all the services that the Austin Tenants Council will provide. And I don't know, this is hard because everything else that's related to stormwater, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like, so that's not helpful. Oh, they're not like this one right here? Oh, you're right. Damn, so y'all didn't mark this as one? Suspicious. Just kidding. Yeah, I guess that's it. Sorry, I was looking at this other one. Oh, yeah. Okay. No, this is the right list. Maybe I just... Oh, sorted. Gotcha. Dang, I should have used the paper form. But that's all I got for now. Everything else I honestly haven't really worked through. I didn't know we were going to be ranking, and I actually didn't see the email, this fabulous chart. So, sorry.
Mayor, I'm not sure if number 2, the mental health diversion, I want to make sure that was on my A list as well.
And what we'll do is, once we get the list, we can say what the list is, just for the public that might be watching, just so they know.
Okay, for the A's is going to be number 4, number 5, and number 10.
I don't know when Mr. Scott will be back, and we're not going to wait on him. So, do y'all have, let's see.
Mr. Meagle, do you have it tallied? And just as a reminder, the reason that this wasn't in the packet is because this was the priority list that council went through last night. And so staff worked on that last night to get this going, but we'll make sure that we read what we can so that the public knows what council is just discussing.
Yeah, it's based on what we did yesterday, so I appreciate that after 5 work yesterday.
All right, I think the number 1 priority would be number 5, the Employee Benefits Merit Compensation Program. The ones that I also had 5 A's for were cybersecurity and municipal court relocation. And then I have 4 A's for the multi-year public safety staffing plan. So I think Group A would be Employee Benefits Merit Compensation Program, Municipal Court Relocation, Cybersecurity, and Multi-Year Public Safety Staffing Plan.
Mr. Meagle, I have a question for you on number 2. Did you have 3 A's?
I had 3 A's.
Add a 4th one.
Okay. So that adds mental health diversion as the 4th item under Group A. 5th?
That's the 5th one. It's 1,
You're right.
2, 4, 5, and 10.
Yes.
So that's-
Correct.
A multi-year public safety staffing plan, mental health diversion, municipal court relocation, employee benefits, merit compensation, and then cybersecurity. So those are the top 5, number 1 priorities. Does that sound?
That's what I've got for my chart.
Mayor, if you're looking at this as well, I'm gonna change number 2, writing number, I'm gonna make it an A as well. My apologies.
It's already on the short list, but we'll make that change.
That's a good A list.
Yeah, 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
All right. Thank you. Now we'll proceed to the B list, mayor council. The mic, council.
I think our number 1 cost should be new microphones.
New microphones. I'm gonna have number 3 on there. Didn't get it for A, but I want it for B. I did have number 6, number 7, number 11.
11 is not part of the group.
The economic development was?
No.
Oh, because it's budget, likely budget neutral. Okay, so we didn't have that
Stop
one?
at 10.
Yeah, we're
10.
focusing on the top 10. They all
Okay,
make the
no,
one.
that's perfect.
The ones we rated 1 yesterday.
Yeah, no, you're good. I just kept going down the list. So 6 and 3 and number 7.
For me, I have number 6, the parks maintenance. Then I have number 7 for the homeless contract attendance council. And then I have number 9 for the DIA efforts.
Well, for now, what I have for number 6 is number 6 for B and number 7 for D.
I'm 6, park maintenance, 7, homelessness, and 14, I-35 beautification efforts.
We only go down to number 10.
I'm sorry.
Stay on page 1.
11, economic development.
Yeah, 1 through 10, our top ones from yesterday.
6 and 7 then.
Oh, this is hard. I'm trying to like limit my B's because then we're gonna still fall into the same dill pickle where it's like not super spaced out. For sure, okay, which one didn't make it? Oh, number 7, the tenants aid. Oh, JK, well, but it didn't make it to A, so then wouldn't there be like a pool then for 2? Right, but it didn't make A. We already decided on A. Is that how we're doing that?
So it doesn't fall in fire.
We're not looking at how many 3 A's. Okay, I'm with you.
Okay. Yeah, so 7 will be my B. I wish it was A. But, and then number 9 will be my other B.
Oh, I gave you But here goes again. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, yes.
Sorry. Mr. Demerit?
Did- No, I found them. I was looking in the wrong column. Okay.
For me, the Bs is 6, 7, and 9. I'm sorry, 8. Oh, see, the ones that I have as A, I'm thinking that they're already done. Okay. Did we hear all the Bs? I don't think so. We have one more. That's it? Yeah? I don't think we heard that. Did we?
I did.
You did? Okay, we did. Okay. Thank you.
So I think with that one, we had the homelessness that received 6 Bs. We had parks maintenance that received 5. And no other ones received a majority. However, DEI efforts received 2. Then the animal shelter and the single-use container ban both received 1.
DEI got 2 As and 2 Bs, so I would think that that would be worthy of a B overall.
I wasn't sure if you had marked that as an A. Okay.
I hadn't, but I got 2 As and there's 2 Bs
Okay.
for DEI, so I would think that that was, because when I looked at As, I'm going, oh yeah, that's already done.
I missed that then with
So-
my tally of the A's.
Are y'all good with that one? If it's got 2 As and 2 Bs, then it can be a B?
Okay, so that would mean that group B would be parks maintenance, homelessness, and DEI efforts. And then the remaining ones would be in group C. That would be enforcement and communications of the single-use container ban and the animal shelter.
And I'm hoping we can find some way to get animal shelter in there at that comparatively low rate. Have we gotten where you need us to be, Ms. Rogers?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, staff.
What will, just to make sure it's clear.
Okay.
So on the Kanban one, with enforcement and communications, and where we're gonna take that is look at existing funding. Of course, council has to pass the ordinance first and make sure that that's where you wanna go with it. But we'll look at existing funding on the Kanban based on HOT and also communications for signage and things. And then as far as adding the extra marshal, that's the one that we'll look at and depend on what funding is available then after we find all the other revenue sources.
Yeah, if we had split that, I could have put the marshal in the first group because that's into employees and stuff. So we'll see how all this shakes out and how the dollar shakes out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that puts us at 11:35. Lunch is here. We'll go ahead and do a 30-minute. I think we did that yesterday. So we'll come back 5 after 12. And then we'll go into just reviewing that strategic plan, make sure we're aligned and next steps. And I think that will conclude us. All right, so see you all at 12:05. Okay, as everyone's coming on back, we have, well, first of all, I just want to say great work today of prioritizing our priorities. So we have a way to go and a roadmap ahead. And with that being said, we want to look at the 2023 strategic plan that was approved March 21st, 2023. and just review them and the outputs of of that plan, and to make sure and see if there's any modifications from mayor and council. And the form that I'm looking at, everything was emailed to you, but also there's a hard copy as well, and it should be labeled 2023 Strategic Plan.
Also in the packet for the public.
And yes, thank you so much.
And before we get into that, the one thing I did want to clarify. The one thing that I did want to clarify is just that I know yesterday the council also talked about property tax relief. So that will be something that we'll need to talk about, but we'll talk about that more during budget policy, because that's when we'll be asking y'all to get some specific direction, more along the lines of we're going for $5,000, $10,000, what it is that we're doing. So just wanted to let y'all know that's why we're not talking about it today. We know that there's a general consensus to look at property tax relief, and so we'll look at that further at budget policy.
And thank you, Katie. We are also have it up on screen as well. And as Stephanie mentioned, for the public, it's also in the folder there as well. Okay. All right, so where we can begin, we can look at each goal in the output, and I'll also just remind you all of where your priorities actually align with those goals and outputs. So that'll be helpful to ensure that there's no modifications and we can keep things as is. So the first one is quality of life and sense of place. And as a reminder, under there, we have cultivate a community that promotes inclusivity, equity, and belonging as a unique sense of place due to our distinct natural, historical, and cultural assets, and commits to a healthy quality of life for families of all types. Some of the inputs to that particular goal is comprehensive planning, strong community engagement, the downtown vitality, arts, culture, and special events, parks, open space and recreation, neighborhood preservation and enhancement. There's also details of those, of A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, under the same, housing affordability, facilitate safe and affordable housing. Underneath is details of those inputs as well. Mayor, council, any modifications to those inputs of comprehensive planning, strong community engagement, downtown vitality, arts, culture, and special events, parks, open space and recreation, neighborhood preservation and enhancement, and housing affordability. And just to note that line 6, 7, and 9 from your priority list aligned with that. And line 6, of course, was parks and maintenance, 7 was homelessness, and 9 was the DEI effort. Any modifications, Mayor, Council? Are we good to go? We're aligned. Awesome. The second one is economic vitality, and underneath there, just so the public can know, underneath, we're saying foster a vibrant economic climate for our community through new commercial and residential uses, education, workforce development, and support of new and existing businesses of all sizes. Underneath our inputs are economic development policy, business community, San Marcos as a destination, education and workforce development, and responsible growth. And just so you'll know that one of your priorities, line 11 of economic development, aligned with that as well. Any modifications to that plan or its inputs to it? Mayor and Council.
I don't know that we need to change anything in the policy.
But under B, business community, actively support and attract diversified business activity, including small businesses. Is that something that we're going to be able to focus on this next year? And I'm looking at the smaller businesses. I think we're good with the large ones as far as those looking at San Marcos, and we've got folks who are looking to attract them. But the small ones that I've been talking about for the last 3 years.
Looking at Mr. Smith, and he's saying yes. Would you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So to answer your question, yes, focusing on local and small business support through our economic development strategy is certainly a priority going into the year. And fortunately, council has allocated some funding in the budget in the past for programming that supports that, which we're working to stand up. And part of that includes our Legacy Business Program, as well as some funding available for small business support.
I'm looking at bringing more in. I know that we've got the grants and everything's good there for me, but I'm looking at bringing people in or businesses in to take care of some of those vacant storefronts downtown.
Mayor, I think with the work that Christian Smith has been doing to set up some of the programs that have already been funded, like the Minority Business Program, setting up the Legacy Business Program, that will be a natural progression. Also, as we work with our current provider and possibly looking at different reallocation of resources and maybe bringing some of that work in-house, that will also free up resources for really having an intentional attraction of smaller businesses to the city.
This might already be addressed. So D, which is education and workforce development. Like when we think about what our neighbors need to be well and safe, I think we can all agree it's like addressing their immediate direct basic needs. I feel like that's paramount. But giving them tools to address that, right? So I don't know, I mean, it might already be captured here, but I think it's important that we kind of assess what workforce training programs are popular, which ones are people completing, like their success rates, and then working to see how we can bring more of that type of like industry to the area to allow them to not have to commute outside to use those type of like certificates or stuff like that. I don't know if this verbiage captures that, but that's one thing I think would be helpful to have specificity on. If not written, like is there like an understanding that that's what goes down?
I think it's the one that says identify challenges and unmet needs in the business community that are impacted by workforce development. So I think that's a constant assessment that's needing to happen. And with us formalizing a partnership with Austin Community College, that'll be another thing that we'll be able to look at and see, what kinds of programs have interest. If there are other areas that we need to look at, then that's something that we can do. But yes, that should be something that we're doing on a regular basis to make sure that we're understanding challenges and unmet needs so that if we need to evolve and change some of the things that are offered, that we're able to be responsive.
Okay, cool. Because when I read this, I'm not getting that, but it could also just be me.
And however, if y'all would like to make changes to make sure that then that's fine too. So we're open to whatever council's prerogative is on that.
Well, this is something that I feel like we've been doing fairly well. Thank you to the library staff and others who have been supporting that. And once we get the ACC classes up and rolling, it's going to be fabulous. And I look forward to a number of people being able to upscale, get to that next level, find one job with benefits instead of 3 part-time jobs. So thank you to those who are working on that, because I think you're making a big difference in our community.
It would be helpful, again, because those workforce development programs are, like, it's something that the neighbors cite a lot as to, can we get more of this, da-da-da-da. It would be cool if you could just, like, email us kind of an update of where that's at, so we can communicate that to our neighbors. I'm sure you have emailed us updates in, like, city manager's report or in some capacity, but I'm just a girl with 3 jobs and 5 cats and not enough time to sort through all that. So thanks.
Any other additional comments from council? All right, thank you. All right, our third is public safety, core services, and fiscal excellence. Deliver quality government services and improve community safety in a fiscally responsible manner with a professional workforce. We have inputs of community safety, core government services, financial management, workforce recruitment and retention, support services, and infrastructure management. Just so you all know, that line items 1, 2, 4, 5, and 10, which were your P1s of your 1s, all fell within this particular goal. Also, you had a B of line 8. Any what modifications you may have? Oh, absolutely, for the public too. So for line 1, we have multi-year public safety staffing. Number 2, mental health diversion. Number 4, municipal court relocation. 5, employee benefits merit compensation program. And then we had 10, cybersecurity. And that B was number 8, and it was the animal shelter, all in alignment with the goal and the inputs. What modifications there may be or not for the mayor and council, or any added remarks?
Not a good wordsmith, but I think it would be helpful and necessary to name this, and I've brought it up in the past, no bites, but to endeavor to explore community-based interventions to crime and/or violence, violent interruption and intervention program, neighborhood mediation, stuff like that is examples of it. Last year I said, I hope you guys go do your own research and Google it. I don't think most of y'all did that, but that's fine, I'm not your boss. So yeah, that's just a suggestion. It was kind of a bummer that we didn't take advantage of any of the Department of Justice federal monies that go to those programs. I think we're fixing to be able to qualify for that. Do we have an update on that?
March 1st is the EEOP, and so we need to have that also because of the SAFER grants for fire that we're looking at. So we have to make sure that that's there as well as for these other opportunities that you're referencing.
Right, so I get maybe like the last 100 times I mentioned this, like we didn't qualify for a lot of that money. But now that we're going to, I wonder if there's like energy around even just exploring that. Mayor, I'm not a good wordsmith, but just generally explore community-based interventions to crime or violence reduction.
What I don't see reflected here, based on y'all's conversation today, that could be added if council would like to do so, is something that does talk about mental health and diversion, and so there might be something, because when you look in the first one, A, community safety, that might be the best place to put that in, is to talk about some of the support services, the mental health, the diversion aspects, and some of those things that y'all are talking about. So that's a thought as far as and we can work on language. It's just getting additional direction, because this will come back to y'all for approval at a subsequent meeting. So if y'all would like to do something different and just give us that general direction of adding some of that language, then I think we can come up with something.
I'm good with moving in that direction.
Mayor, if I could offer a few comments. So I too asked Linda yesterday about the EEOP, and I was told March 1. So I have a meeting on Monday with Crude Police Institute. I don't know if you're familiar with CPI. They help coordinate on behalf of Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute grants. There are grant opportunities that are specific to mental health that will play out. The deadline is March 14th for us to apply. So I am meeting with them Monday morning with the intent of applying for grants with the belief that the EOP will be in place by March 1st. To Councilwoman Garza's point, one other thing that I want to point out is we will hopefully by April 1st have telehealth crisis services at the time of 911. What does that mean? If you have a family member who is having an acute crisis, you call 911. Currently, you get 2 police officers dispatched to your home. The issue with that is, and all of us would agree, if no crime has been committed, why are we sending cops? Well, we are going to work with Hill Country, which is our licensed mental health authority, and we're going to dovetail into their existing contract with Avail Crisis Services. So now, once we get all the policies done, when the person calls 911, if there hasn't been a crime, to Alyssa Garza's point, they will call Avail Crisis Services, and we will eventually do a warm handoff, and we will put the family in touch with the mental health professionals. So that will be done at time of 911. So we have quite a few things on the mental health initiatives that are playing out, and some of them will be as early as April.
And one thing that I did want to mention is that I talked with Assistant City Manager staff about really making sure, I think there's a lot of conversation that has been had at the Criminal Justice Reform Committee level, and it's stuff that isn't being widely shared with the community. And so I would really like for us to schedule a work session to talk with the public about that, because unless they utilize those services, they may not know that that's available, or unless someone that's close to them. So I think we really need to make sure we're doing a good job of telling the public about these things so that they're not so hesitant to call 911 if there is something going on and they don't know where it's going to be routed to. So just as a FYI, that's something that we're working on internally and getting that scheduled.
Cool. I just want to name or express to Chief that I sincerely appreciate the efforts that he's leading towards these non-carceral crisis interventions. That's a part of reimagining safety, and so I really appreciate how thoughtful you were and putting everything you just described together. To Stephanie's point, I think it's important to name something. I don't know how to conceptualize that type of work, but that type of work, I think it's a priority we expressed but didn't explicitly name in the past, so I appreciate that. And it just makes sense to do it, so thanks. But I do think that's a little bit different, although interconnected with community-based violence reduction or interventions. Yeah, like I said, neighborhood mediation, violence interruption intervention, abuse interruption intervention, prevention. It's programs that have been very recently funded by the DOJ, especially throughout the pandemic. I can't name a whole bunch of them from the top of my head because I have a terrible working memory, but yeah.
We have stood up the Special Investigations Unit. One of their first charter requirements is they are going to draft a violent crime reduction plan. If you know of somebody that you would like to sit in on that committee, because it actually is also has community members already designated to sit in there, then I would welcome a name so that they could be added, so that we can build out the capacity as you described.
Ms. Garza, For the item that you're speaking about adding to this, is there a higher level group description of multiple programs such as the one you're talking about that probably should be added here? Because that one is pretty specific. I'm trying to find the document online to see what the strategies are. And I think maybe this goes there, I'm not sure, or is there a group of related things that we could put in the strategic initiatives?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you from the top of my head. My brain is in very hyper-focus mode, which is specifically about the community-based interventions, and that's just because I feel like the last 3 years I've been on council, I've seen money go to a lot of the foundation stuff, right? Like the training, the getting more people, staff, and da-da-da-da. And I think this part has been missing to approach what keeps being named as a rationale for a lot of our funding decisions. I could think about it. I know we have to talk about this again later. Maybe something that covers both the mental health part and these type of interventions. Because generally, yes, the number, I guess it's 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess it's 4. That would be expanding programs and partnerships, right? That engage the community. That's broadly what these things are. I just have been a little bit,
one suggestion could be, if you're thinking that number 4, maybe we could expand upon it to say, including employing strategies for reaching diverse populations, such as, mental health or social services support. We can have some different words that kind of go with that there to help bring more clarity that that's the intention of the council, if that's where the council wants to go.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm out of ideas, sorry.
But as you say, there's an opportunity to revisit this. But I agree with you, and I've been saying as we see more presentations from the chief at the Criminal Justice Reform Committee, this is stuff that the entire council needs to know about some of the really wonderful things that we're doing, and we're kind of training and planning, and we're getting out there. Some are already out there in use, and for the public. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of good stuff happening that we need to let the public know about, because there's some really good stuff happening.
Any further comments, Mayor Council? All right, thank you.
Take a stab at it based on what we heard, and then we'll bring something back for y'all's discussion and consideration when you approve the strategies for 24. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, number 4, mobility and connectivity. Improve neighborhood and regional connectivity to provide a safe, convenient, and efficient multimodal system for goods, services, and people of all income levels and abilities to move throughout the city. Some inputs we had were multimodal transportation system, bicycle, sidewalk, and trail systems, transportation and traffic operations, and our public transit. Have any or what modifications from Mayor Council? All right, thank you.
This is one of those no news is good news.
The only thing that I might like to potentially add in here as far as wording goes, as far as increased accessibility, connectivity, something that we're getting close to being able to maybe really actually talk about is potential trail system connect all the way around town. I know that's kind of being specific about a potential loop to get all the way around town. If staff could kind of come up with a way to just kind of add that in there somewhere, so that if somebody sees this, they can hear that we're discussing it, and it's kind of something we'd like to see. connect the trails and include all the way around town. Something along those lines.
Any further comments? If we have one more comment?
Perhaps this isn't the spot for it, but under D where it says public transit, well, maybe not. So this is like really focusing on the implementation of the transit master plan, but I just want to name like the imaginative ways that some of our surrounding cities are filling the gap, and then meanwhile they get their public transportation game on. And that's like things like Kyle has the Uber 314 program that has been pretty successful. I brought that up during ARPA conversations where they could get rides within the city of Kyle for $3.14. And that has been really helpful, especially for folks working 2 or 3 jobs, having to get from point A, B, C, and not having transportation or a good public transportation system. So again, I don't know if this is a spot for it, but just as always, like seeking imaginative ways to meet the need while we figure out the larger scope of how we're gonna address public transportation needs.
And then I have one other too also that just be mentioned in somewhere in here in mobility and connectivity is railroad crossings. Just mentioning it someplace in there. I don't care if it's in the transportation system, traffic operations, whatever, just mentioning the railroad crossings.
To clarify, so are you wanting just to give recognition to the railroad crossings and the fact that we have so many throughout our community, or is it more about finding a way to have mobility go around the railroad overpasses? So just wanted to get a little bit, just to make
Just
sure
so
we
that
keep
the public, if they see this and say, if we're talking about mobility and connectivity and not mentioning railroad crossings being an impediment, problem anywhere in town, just so that it's acknowledged.
So acknowledge that they're an impediment to
Yes.
mobility and connectivity. Okay, gotcha. I think that's good. Actually, also with probably us trying to apply for grants and things like that, because then that shows that there's that. So thanks.
All that idling is not helping our planet.
Thank you. Any other further comments? Any other council? Last but not least, environmental protection. Advance responsible stewardship of the community's natural, cultural, and historical resources through varied environmentally friendly policies and practices. Underneath of inputs are environmental stewardship, environmentally friendly growth, resilient infrastructure, and environmental programs. Line 3, and I know there was some conversation about the title item of it. Right now, it's the single-use container ban that is aligned with this particular goal. Modifications, comments from Mayor and Council?
The only thing I'll ask on this one is that if we do get the single-use container ban done before we see this again, that be added in here somewhere, if it does get done. Probably on the stewardship side of things, and I guess environmental programs possibly too. So if it does get passed, that we add that in before, if we see it afterwards.
Okay. Sounds good.
Any further comments? All right, I think that's it. We wrap that up. Any clarity from staff on modifications that were presented? All right, thank you. I think we go ahead and Stephanie, you hand it off as a next steps.
So just want to say again, thank you sincerely, Mayor and Council, for your very thoughtful conversation over these last 2 days and the clear direction that you provided us to really be able to kick off this next step within the budget process. And the next step will be the budget policy statement workshop, which will be held at the end of February. We will also modify the document that we were just looking at with the 2023 strategic plan. It'll now be the 2024-2025 strategic plan, so we'll get that over to you at a subsequent council meeting to look at and approve and make sure that we're on the right track. And then, of course, there will be other check-ins throughout this 9-month budget process for the public as well as for council and staff to discuss the different priorities. Obviously, it's going to be a flexible back and forth depending on as we get additional information throughout the budget process. So we will be bringing this information back to you to talk about at different times throughout the process. But this gives us a really good start. So I want to also thank all the directors for being here and being a part of this. It's important for you to hear from our mayor and council members, so you hear what their priorities and what their thoughts and things are directly from them. It's also important for you to hear from staff for the things that, you know, that affect them operationally. Also want to give a really big shout out to Hayden Meagle for getting all the stuff that he did together for today. Excellent job, Hayden. Also, Carrie Fontenot for doing a great job of helping him. And to Chantel Seymour for doing a great job of facilitating today. So very much appreciate everybody. And, you know, I look forward to us having these really good conversations going forward about how we want San Marcos to be when we grow up. And as we continue to, you know, to find our way, because it is something that's very important. And this process kicks off one of the most important things that you do as a council, and that is to set your budget and to set your priorities and to give us what your thoughts and vision is for San Marcos over the next several years. So very, very important. I know, you know, yesterday we talked a lot about what that looks like in terms of the diversity of our tax base and everything. And believe me, I'm from here. I love San Marcos. I don't want it to lose the charm and the beauty that San Marcos has to offer. I know when we talk about commercial, industrial, and the different mix, I know that there's always that fear that comes along sometimes with that. And so not advocating at all that we not preserve the beautiful, precious resources that we have here, the river and all those things. So not advocating that it be something that's not environmentally friendly or pollutant or any of that kind of stuff. It's just us having to, again, reimagine and rethink the way that we grow as a community, and having council know some ways to be able to get there to try to help achieve the goals that you want to achieve going forward. So thank you very much, and I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you. So this concludes item 1. All right, then it is now time for question and answer with the present public. The folks have 3 minutes to ask their questions. If there's anything we can answer immediately, we will. Otherwise, information will be emailed to the person who asked and posted on our message board. I believe our first, we have 3, and they're all remote. Our first one is Lisa Marie Capoletta. Is she online with us? All right, Ms. Capoletta.
Y'all, I was given they just popped me in. Give me 1 second to set up my timer. They've had us, please don't start that timer. They have had us, kicked us out, made us sit and watch on Zoom. There was no indication in the meeting when we would get in, and now you're popping me in. Give me 1 second here. If this is on camera.
Would you like me to go to this person and cycle back?
Yeah, I'd love it. I'd love to make my hair look halfway decent. I've been sitting here taking notes. I'd love it. Thank you. Actually, go ahead. I'm always ready to speak. I'm not going to be a wimp. Hold on a second.
Go ahead.
I mean, I did my hair for y'all today. No, I didn't. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Professor Lisa Marie Capoletta, and I've got actually, I have a question, and this could go into your equity officer. This can go into ADA. This is something that's been in our land development code. And I'm just going to out it right now. There's 2 things I have for your DEI. Number 1, I've gone through all of the reports of how much the taxpayers are paying for translating those agendas. And it's up to $100 to $300 per agenda. And I have another open records request that says that there were no complaints for Spanish agendas. And then I cross-referenced those agendas to the city council website. And what I noticed is the agendas weren't up. And then I leaked it to a couple of people, and now suddenly they're up. So, or else I was an airhead and missed them. But I'm noticing the agendas that are up in Spanish, there's no timestamp except for a couple of them. And so if we have no complaints for Spanish agendas, and some of the agendas aren't even up that I have receipts for, and there's no outreach on telling people how they can sign up, especially for this one, right? Like, people didn't know how to sign up. That's what Max is. I'm just wondering how you guys can justify this type of funding when you're hearing from the fire chief, we need more firefighters to fight those high rises. The other question I have, and this is maybe maybe I should just start, and I've got a video blog I was going to post, and quite frankly, I wasn't going to post it yesterday because I didn't want it to fall on Liz, because I think she's overworked, and I think it was your DEI officer's job to fact check that those agendas were up. And I was trying to be Christian, think, do I want to? And I'm thinking, gosh, y'all are paying her a lot of money. It's just another city job when we have a crashing economy. We're in 2 wars right now, the one in Israel, the one in Ukraine, and then we've got the Texas border situation. And you guys are virtue signaling equity. And I want to be really honest. I tried to help her at the very onset of her position, and nobody wanted to get involved. And I have a very diverse group of friends, and my track record as a political candidate is unparalleled as a white lady in those neighborhoods. So people know what I'm about. And meanwhile, you've got planning shoving out a 2014 petition for a 2023 CUP when some of those people on that petition were deceased. So my question is, how can you guys justify this when we have really important costs? And the second one is, you've got this high rise Shannon wants to shove through, and your developer will not have a virtual meeting. And your city staff, this is a DEI issue, and this is an equity issue. If we're going to pay her, then we need to be thinking about the neighbors and how city staff say, well, we're just here just to observe, and well, it's just kind of a meeting. No, this is in the code for a reason. So for retired people, if they want to get on Zoom and be engaged with that developer, they can, or if they're ADA covered like I am. So now your planning department is fixing to get into hot water for ADA situation as well as optics, and then DEI. So that's just my issue with DEI, is you guys are using this for just a feel-good position, is my perception. Thank you for your time, and I guess I'll just stand by. And I would ask you in the future to be a little bit more equitable with the people who actually sit around here all day and waiting to speak, and you give us a little bit of notification.
Okay, we'll go on to.
Well, I just wondered if you have any response about those agendas not being
I'm
posted
working
that
on
we
it.
paid for.
Ms. Capoletta, we're going to mute you. I'm looking to see what responses, if we have any at this time, or if we will be responding to her afterwards after we do some checking regarding her questions.
So I can answer about the Spanish agendas, and Ms. Surley can chime in if I miss something. We were given council direction to look at translating the agendas, and that's happening with American Rescue Plan monies. And so it's the agendas only, it's not the agenda packet, it's only the agendas, and then on there it says if there are any requests for a specific agenda item to be translated, then the person can do that. So it's not general fund monies, so it's not competing with the police and fire and what they're able to use those funds for. It is direction we got from council to do that forward. As far as the visioning packet not being posted, that was, the actual agenda was posted on Friday afternoon. However, I don't want to speak for the city clerk. I know we've talked about it, and she can fill in if I mischaracterize or say anything different. But she did not post on the website because we were still getting the presentation together, which was sent to council late Friday night. And so once she knew that we had done that, then she got it up on Saturday so that the complete packet would be there for the public. It wasn't just the agenda without the packet. So is that?
Yeah, I appreciate you very much, Stephanie. Your presentation was really thoughtful about Mitchell Street, and I apologize I didn't reference that. I was just kind of thrown in here like the Hunger Games, that little shoot. No, my question is about all those other agendas that you guys had translated that weren't up.
Ms. Capoletta, we're going to get back with you on all of this. You have used your 3 minutes for this Q&A time period. So if there's anything unresolved that staff determines, they'll get back with you by email. Our next speaker is Maxfield Baker, who is not joining us at this time. And what about Diana Baker? She's on? All right, Diana Baker, you are next.
Okay, my question, oh, let me start the video. Okay. I just have one question. Are we going to be allowing people from out of town, even people who shop here, maybe from another country even, to weigh in on our plan or this survey? I mean, it's just, I understand that people who have a business here have an interest in it, and some people do have an interest. But I mean, I don't think that shopping should be a criteria for being allowed to weigh in on our comprehensive plan. And I'm just wondering what is the plan? What are the criteria for being able to sign in? Are you going to be taking addresses?
Let us answer that.
Hi, Ms. Baker. This is Amanda Hernandez, Director of Planning and Development Services. Our comprehensive plan survey will be out online, so really anyone in the entire world will have access to take it. But we've been given direction by City Council to have a question at the top of the survey that asks if they live, work, own property, shop, own a business, that type of thing. So we will have all of that as part of the raw data, which we do plan to release.
So the people who shop here will be kept in you'll be able to tell if it's just people who shop here, it's all going to be separated?
Ms. Baker, we have answered the question. We don't do back and forth during Q&A. If there's any further information, that will be emailed to you and put on the message board.
I'm very grateful for all your work. Y'all have the stamina of unbelievable people. So thank you very much. I appreciate all you did.
Thank you. Mr. Vino, is there anyone else? No. Okay, then that concludes the question and answer portion of our program, at which time our next item of business is to adjourn, and I will accept a motion to do so. Motion by Mr. Mendoza, seconded by Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Vino, let's vote.
Mr. Scott, Ms. Garza. Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason. Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
All right, and we have concluded the day 2 of our vision workshop at 12:49.